Ladies and gentlemen, I call this meeting of the City Council to order. Please note that pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15th order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatoni's declaration of emergency on March 15th, 2020. This meeting of the City Council will be conducted via remote participation. We will post an audio recording, audio-video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of these proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the City of Somerville website and local cable access government channels. Now please rise for the prayer and pledge of allegiance.
Mr. President, let's begin this meeting with a prayer. God, grant this City Council the serenity to accept the things that cannot be changed, the courage to change the things that can be changed, and the wisdom to know the difference. And now let's join in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. And Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
This is roll call. Councilor Klingon.
Present.
Councilor Mba.
Present.
Councilor White.
Here.
Councilor Ballantyne. Councilor Ballantyne.
Here.
Councilor Strezzo.
Present.
Councilor Niedergang.
Present. Can you hear me, Mr.? I've been having audio.
We can hear you.
Loud and clear.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Davis. Here. Councilor Scott.
Present.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Here.
Councilor Rossetti.
Present.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Here.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors are present. We have a quorum.
Do we have any moments of silence? Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a moment of silence this evening for Warren Shaley. Warren was a long time resident of the city of Somerville, though he, a few years ago, moved to Saugus. He was 92 years of age. He's the brother of Jerry Shaley, who I believe was, I don't know if he's still involved with the cab company here. He was a veteran of World War II. He was a Red Belt Grand Master of a karate organization, and he was a member of the Laborers Union 22. Late veteran, a member of the Greatest Generation, serving his country in the U.S. Army during World War II. And he's also the father of Warren Shaley, who was in our police department, and he's actually the police officer who works with the Licensing Commission. And I know Chair of the Licensing Commission, Joe Lynch, also offers his condolences to the Shaley family. Thank you.
Councilor Niedergang.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like us to remember Ed Severino, a beloved husband of Elaine Severino, the longtime member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Ed was 81, lived in Somerville. He died on September 9th. He was a true Somervillian, born in Union Square, graduated from Somerville High School, then enlisted in the Marine Corps. At the end of his service, he returned to Somerville in 1978, Elaine in Union Square. Ed was a loving and devoted husband, as well as a supportive father to their daughter, Mary Kay, and son, Mark. Ed greeted all who passed by the rug store in Porter Square that he owned for 35 years. And he helped the elderly in their final years as a volunteer after he retired from that. He loved the outdoors, and especially Maine, and this love began with a camping honeymoon and continued for the next 41 years. So thank you for remembering Ed Severino. He and his wife, Elaine, own a house on White Street right by the big Star Market mall there. Thank you, Mr. President.
Do we have any other moments of silence?
Mr. President, it's Councilor Rossetti.
Councilor Rossetti.
I would just like to please sign on to Mr. Severino's.
Yes, I'd like to sign on to both as well. And are there any other moments of silence?
Mr. President,
Councilor White?
thank you. Two things. I'd also like to sign on to the one for Mr. Severino, but also I think this evening, even though she was not a resident of Somerville, we should have a moment of silence for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, and we're all aware of her passing and the great contributions she's made for justice in this country, and I think it's appropriate.
All right, Councilor Davis and Ballantyne would like to sign on to Severino, and I'm sure the entire council would like to sign on to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It is a very sad week, unfortunately, and Ben Ewen-Campen for Severino as well. Are there any other moments of silence? So I unfortunately have 2 moments of silence, both for people that I grew up with. One is a good friend of mine named Brian Buckley. Some of you who have been in the city for a while may remember Matt Buckley, former, worked in the solicitor's office and still lives in Somerville. Brian, I went basically from 7th and 8th grade on, and have known him for many years. We share the same birthday, and every year he would shoot me a text and remind me of my own birthday, because I forget other people's birthdays as well as my own. And Buckley would always call me and say happy birthday, and I'd have a brief moment where I say, oh, how did he remember? Oh, of course, we have the same birthday. Very sad to see him go. Just another memory of him as well. In the 7th and 8th grade, we did a performance of Guys and Dolls, and he was Nathan Detroit, and I was Big Julie, and he knocked me out in front of a captive audience who was very happy to see that happen. He's one of the funniest people I knew in a class full of real comedians. His family, I express my condolences to his family, and I'm really going to miss Brian. Another moment of silence is for Lauren Marie Lopez, who does not live in Somerville, but her husband, Ronald Lopez, it was another friend I grew up with from 7th and 8th grade on. She sadly passed away of cancer at the age of 33, and I would just like to remember her as well. So if there's no other moments of silence, please rise for a moment of silence. Please be seated. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, item number 3 is the approval of the minutes of the special meeting of August 5th and the regular meeting of August 27th.
This item is laid on the table for approval.
Item number 4 is a citation submitted by City Councilor McLaughlin commending Annie Connor, who is resigning after 4 years of dedicated service as the mayor's liaison to this city council.
All right, well, we're losing yet another legislative liaison, unfortunately. I feel like this position is like being the child of divorce. You're between 2 bickering parents trying to find out how to do right by both of them and make everybody happy. And that's probably a good reason why we keep losing these really talented people. I've really enjoyed working with Annie over the past few years as president, and then before that as well. You've always been a great resource to me, and I've always enjoyed your sense of humor, and I'm really going to miss you, but the way things are going with legislative liaisons, you may be back in a few months in a new position. So hopefully this is not goodbye. As I say in Somerville, we say see you later, we don't say goodbye, and I hope we see you again soon. I have several people who want to comment, but I'm going to give the floor to Ms. Connor first. Annie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the council. I guess I should act surprised here, but actually someone tipped me off that this was going to happen tonight. So I prepared a few words. My father always said the best off-the-cuff speech takes about 3 days to prepare. I want to thank the council. First, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, loud and
Okay.
clear.
if there's one thing that, you know, this council and the mayor have taught me, it's that we should use the platform we're given to advocate for progress. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to take a few moments to share some reflections about my experience working for the city of Somerville for the last 4 years. I've been honored to be part of some very formative experiences or moments with the city in its recent history. Things like the GLX condo conversion, the zoning overhaul, and much, much more. And I joined the team when in 2016, and that was a time when local government was quickly being recognized as a form of resistance. People were recognizing that cities were really an anchor for our democracy. I am honored to have been part of such a progressive municipal government, and to have worked for such a passionate and energetic mayor in Joe Curtatone, and I want to thank him for the opportunity to work for the city. The mayor has a lot of truly inspiring ideas about how to move this city forward, but he understands that those ideas are only as effective as the people who convert them into actions and policies. And that work of converting ideas into action and policy, and of taking care to ensure that the city thrives amidst progress, that is the work that my colleagues in Somerville take up every day. I wish I could name everyone that I've worked with, but I'll just say thank you to the entire staff here in the city. Thank you for all that you've taught me, and thank you especially for meeting this unprecedented moment in our history with a deeper well of energy, creativity, compassion, and resilience than could ever be expected. I will miss working alongside you. I used to joke, sometimes still joke, that Somerville should have a tagline, Somerville, one long community process and some houses. And it's clear that community process, civic engagement is one of Somerville's greatest strengths. But I've learned in my time here that the change that can come from this civic engagement and this community process, that change only comes at the speed of trust. Trust between the council and the mayor and the staff and the community. Now, trust doesn't have to mean constant agreement. In fact, it can't. But it must include a generosity of assumption that everyone is fulfilling their role to the best of their ability. And it also must include a mutual respect as people, as public servants working in the same city for the same goal every day. My role here in the city included being a bridge between the council and the administration. And that part of my job was the most challenging and where I feel I've fallen most short. So as I wrap up my time here in the city, I've put together a few reflections on how that bridge could be strengthened in the future. I've put it all in writing, as is frequently the request of this council. And I will email it to you and to the staff later this evening. But I hope that you can trust that I am coming from a perspective that we all, together in the service of Somerville, are on the same team. At a time when our democracy is crumbling all around us, it is our trust in each other that will help move us forward and will make residents continue to make them proud to call Somerville home. So thank you again for this citation and for the opportunity to say a few words tonight. I will miss working with all of you.
I'm sure the entire council would like to sign on. I apologize for not including everyone right away. We have a long list of people who want to bid you farewell. Councilor Barr, Councilor Davis, and Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Thank you for the recognition, Mr. President. Thank you, not Liaison Connor, like Director Connor. It's really been an honor. I still remember the first time I met with you, you know, as modest as you are, you're flexible to meet me down at MIT, you know, knowing that I'm, you know, it's like, because I can't move, you know? So that alone meant so much to me, and learning about you, your background, just your passion for doing good, you know, it stood with me till now that you're leaving. So, because I always believe that you don't need, you don't need a second time to create a first impression, you know? So it's like once we had a good time, and, you know, and if it takes you a long time to know somebody, then there's a problem. So, and I hope that my interaction with you since then to this day that you're living has reflected that, you know? And of course, we've had a few arguments left and right, but it's just, like you said, for the common good. So I just want to say thank you for all the work that you've done for the city. Thank you for the help that you've given to me personally, and the advice that you've also provided along the way. And I really wish you all the best. Thank you, Annie.
We got Councilor Davis, Ewan-Campen, and Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for bringing this. So grateful to you, Director Connor, for everything that you've been, all the work that we've done together, both in your role as legislative liaison, and certainly more so there, given the direct contact that we had, and some very late nights over the last few years. But I'm just, I know you are as proud as I am of the things that we did and we accomplished together as a council and as administration, and I appreciate your words. I know that the place to which you're going is a really fabulous place, so I'm both thrilled and a little jealous. But I guess if there's any place that you know, to at least a place as good as Somerville, you picked a good one. And I know you'll certainly enjoy that and thrive in your new role. And they're the lucky ones that are getting you. I will. I'll keep it brief and wrap up and just say two more things. One, just again, thank you so much. And two, I guess the only solace that I take is that among the things at which you were brilliant was your hiring. So I know we'll be in good hands. If anyone has a chance to fill in your shoes, I know you found that person. And that itself is yet another credit to you. So thanks and good luck. And as President McLaughlin said, we'll see you later.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Director Connors. As I said in an email, I'm very happy for you and I'm very sad for us. I was thinking just now when you were talking, whenever I'm at a protest and people are saying, show me what democracy looks like, I always think like people like you behind the scenes. I think that is an aspect of the democratic process that not a lot of people get the opportunity to see, and how much talent and hard work and compassion for the public good that you have shown. I think you spoke about building trust with the community, and I think you know, if more folks got to see you in action, more folks would have a lot of trust in the government. So I'm incredibly thankful. You know, when I was elected in 2017, along with many other new councilors, you've been here that whole time. And, you know, I was totally new to government, totally new to Somerville politics. And so you've been, the face of how I've interacted with the government for the entire time that I've been in public office, and I've really learned a lot from you, and I will take that forward, and I'm incredibly excited about the work that you're going to do. And I just want to thank you on behalf of Somerville, and look forward to working with you again soon.
Councilor Clingan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, Annie, I just want to say that I'm really happy for you, and that you'll be missed here. But I know that you're going to greener pastures, literally. And I couldn't be happier. But I'm really thankful for all the time that you spent here, and everything thank you for those words, by the way. Everything you said was really on point, and I look forward to reading some of your suggestions. With that said, all the best, Annie. Seriously, best wishes, and see you around.
Councilor Ballantyne? Councilor Ballantyne? Oh, there you are.
Sorry, things are slow here. Hi. I hope you're enjoying your new home. You have done so much for our community. I'd like to thank, you used to live on Powderhouse Boulevard, right? And I'm hoping that you voted for me when I got elected. But then you moved.
No one else on the ballot.
I didn't hear that.
There's no one else on the ballot.
Right. So I just, can't thank you enough. You handle your work with such grace and dignity. You've done Somerville so proud, and you've handled the transitions from the executive and legislative branches so well. And I can't thank you enough. I've enjoyed our one-on-one times over the last 4 years. You're just an incredible person. And I do also want to thank you for hiring Khushbu, because you did an awesome job on that. So I look forward to seeing you in your new home. Thank you.
I got Councilor Rossetti, White, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Ms. Connor. Annie, I want to thank you for your years with myself and my colleagues. And I'm going to keep it brief. I'll be responding to your email, and I look forward to reading that. But I really, truly want to wish you the best of luck in your next chapter. And please do your best to stay safe. God bless.
Councilor White?
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't want to repeat what everyone has said, but I certainly, over the course of the years, enjoyed working with Annie. And, I admire the way she was able to conduct herself in many tense situations. And I'm going to ask her how her tongue is, because I'm sure over the course of these years, she must have bitten it a few times during some of these meetings. So anyway, Annie, good luck in the future, and thank you for your service.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. President, and all thanks to Director Connor. In my first year, it was easy in all of the tumult and all of the important work that happened to overlook that in all those sections that went to midnight and beyond, that Director Connor, Liaison Connor at the time, had been there since very early in the morning and was there until very late at night, as Councilor White said, frequently biting her tongue and working through a difficult process. I think what's continually impressed me, Director, through you, Mr. President, is your absolute dedication and that of so many people in city government to trying to get it right and to trying to get the city to work along together. And it is hard, it's contentious, and as has always been the case, your constructive criticism is acute and useful, and I look forward to your email. But more than that, I look forward to hopefully many years of getting to see you come back around and helping us figure it out. We are all in this together, no matter where we end up landing. So thank you again for all of your service and for all of your patience.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to wish you the best of luck. And I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts in writing and hopefully learn from them. And also, I hope we have a chance to one day work together again. Wish you my absolute best. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion or any final comments from Annie? Hearing nothing more, this item is laid on the table for approval. Please don't be a stranger, Annie. Laid on the table for approval. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, we move to item number 5, which is a citation submitted by Councilor Ewan Campen, Ballantyne, McLaughlin, and the Mayor, commending Ann Casesso for celebrating 50 years and counting of dedicated service to the Somerville Public Library.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And can we read item 6 as well?
Please read item 6, Mr. Clerk.
Item 6 is a citation submitted by Councilor Ewan Campen, Ballantyne, McLaughlin, and the Mayor, commending Wendy Wood as she retires after 40 years of dedicated service to the Somerville Public Library.
Councilor Barr would like to sign on to both. And Councilor Ewan Campen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is a great honor tonight to present these citations to two absolutely incredible members of the Somerville Library, Ann Casesso, who just reached the unbelievable milestone of having worked at the library for 50 years, and to Wendy Wood, who is retiring after 40 years of service. So I would like to sponsor Library Director Kathy Piantagini to join us to share some brief words about each, and then I'm hoping we can hear a few words from Ms. Casesso and Ms. Wood.
All right, Councilor Davis and Klingon would like to sign on, and Councilor Ewan Campen would like to sponsor Ms. Piantagini. Sorry. She just got unmuted herself, so you have the floor.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I first of all would just love to thank the council for sponsoring citations for both Ann and Wendy. Combined, their years of service is 90, which is just incredible to me. I've had the great honor to work alongside them for 27 of those years. They both take enormous pride in their work. Wendy, particularly on a library network level, she was always really involved with the Minuteman Library Network and tech services committees, and was always very exacting in how she approached her work. And Ann, she, well, what can I say about both of them? But with Ann, I feel so lucky that I have the job that I have, and yet I think when I look back on my career, the 15 years that I worked right beside Ann, shoulder to shoulder in the children's room are going to be my most favorite. She really did teach me how to be a children's librarian. She has so much love for every child that goes into the children's room, and she makes every child feel special, heard, respected. Unfortunately, Wendy, well, fortunately for her, she's in Martha's Vineyard celebrating right this second, so her connection's been spotty. And I told her that I would share her words to the council. She wanted to thank you for the honor. And she said, while the library has reinvented itself so many times, two things remain constant. The workplace encourages creativity and innovation, and the staff is awesome. And that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, looks like the entire council would like to sign on. And did Ann want to say anything? Let's see what happens. Ann, are you there?
I'm here.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Kathy took the words right out of my mouth. I feel so, so lucky. It has been such an honor and a privilege to have spent my entire career living and working in my hometown. I'd like to thank Mayor Curtatone and this city council and all the past mayors and elected officials who have generously and thoughtfully supported the Somerville Library throughout the years. You've all recognized the importance of a vibrant library system for our residents, and particularly for the children. Finally, I would just like to thank my family, my friends, and my library family, including our director, Kathy Piantagini, for their continuing efforts to make the city a great place to live and work. Thank you all so very much. And I'm not retiring yet. It'll be another 50 years.
Thank goodness.
If I could speak real quick on Anne, because she's a constituent of mine, as is almost her entire family. You could take her name off of this order and replace it with blank Gassesso of dedicated service to the Somerville, to the city of Somerville, and it would apply to almost every family member. You know, we have many Cassessos and Ercolinis involved in various levels of city government, and I appreciate all of them. I appreciate having you still in the community, because it's not that many old families like that still remain and are so ingrained in the community. So I want to thank you for your service and thank your entire family for your service. And then we have Wendy. Is Wendy here? Did they say Wendy wasn't here? I don't see her.
Oh yeah, Wendy isn't. She wasn't able to get a signal. She's on Martha's Vineyard celebrating her retirement.
Well, Wendy, we all thank you as well. Is there any further discussion? Here, no discussion. These items are laid on the table for approval. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, continuing with the regular order of business.
Yes, well, actually, yes, Councilor Ballantyne would like to move to take item number 17 out of order. Hearing no objections, Councilor King, please read item number 17.
Mr. President, item number 17 is a resolution.
I did, and I found nervous.
17 is a resolution submitted by Councilor Ballantyne supporting Tufts University students and the Tufts Labor Coalition in their advocacy efforts promoting a healthy and supportive work environment for Tufts dining workers during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Looks like the entire council wants to sign on. Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you. So I'd just like to say a few words, and then I would like to sponsor Patricia O'Brien and also Christina Wan, who should be in the audience. So this resolution is supporting Tufts University students and the Tufts Labor Coalition and their advocacy efforts in promoting a healthy and supportive working environment for Tufts dining workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm asking the council to support this resolution and their efforts to advocate for the best possible working conditions for all Tufts dining workers. And the two people that I am sponsoring are dining workers for Tufts University. Mr. President, can you see them?
Yeah, could you say the names again?
So the first person is Patricia O'Brien. And
I don't see
the second.
What's the second name?
Christina Wan.
I don't see either one here. Do you see them, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. President, I don't see them, but I wonder if they are present, if they could raise their hand using the little raise hand icon.
Well, they'd be here if they'd be listed if that was the case.
So they did send me a message but this was about 20 minutes ago, that they had difficulty getting in. So I sent them the link, and they should have.
How about we
I
lay
didn't
this-
hear any. Yes, please. If you could lay it on the table and I can see if I can get them.
Okay, we'll lay this item on the table for now
Thank you.
and return to the regular order of business.
Very good, Mr. President. That brings us to item number 7, which is a public hearing on a grand location application submitted by NSTAR, which seeks to install 180 feet of conduit in Somerville Avenue from a manhole to a point of pickup at 258 Somerville Avenue.
All right, just to remind everybody, now we are potentially approving permits tonight. I won't extend the public hearing unless the ward councilor or councilor requests that. So if anybody has an issue with any of these permits, please let me know and we'll extend the public hearing. Otherwise, we will vote to approve or reject tonight. So I now declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Please use the hand icon. Jackie Duffy, you have the floor. I've unmuted you, Jackie, but it looks like you're self-muted. Jackie, you there?
Yep, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
We'd like to install 180 feet of conduit from manhole 8652 to private property.
All right.
This work is for the revitalization of Union Square.
All right. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak on this item? Please use the hand icon. I don't see anybody. Going once, going twice. All right, I now declare this public hearing closed. Any discussion from the council? Hearing no discussion, this item is laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Item number 8 is a public hearing and a grand location application submitted by TC Systems, which seeks to install 295 feet of conduit from a utility pole at the intersection of Church Street and Somerville Ave through 2 new handholds in Somerville Ave, then ending at a proposed extranet handhole near 411 Somerville Avenue at Quincy Street.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Jackie, is this you again? Number 8. Oh, Adam Heller. Mr. Heller, you have the floor.
Hello, thank you. This is Adam Heller from Sienna Engineering Group. Sorry for the background noise. Representing TC Systems for this petition, which will start at pole 68/4 on Church Street. It'll continue about 300 feet down Somerville Avenue until it reaches the intersection of Quincy Street, at which point it'll end at a proposed handhole right at that intersection. It'll be 2 PVC conduits for fiber optic cable for telecommunications. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak on this item? Please use the hand icon. Going once, going twice. Seeing no further comments, I now declare this public hearing closed. Is there any discussion on the item? Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we have 2 permits before us for this same general location. One from TC Systems and one that appears from Extranet itself. So through you, Mr. President, I'd just like to know, is this work from TC Systems in support of the Extranet installation that's going to go in?
You answer that, Mr. Heller?
Yeah, yes, I can. So this conduit will end at the proposed Extranet handhole location, which will feed I believe an already approved small cell site right at the new light post that they'll be installing, which is also shown on our plan. That small section, that entire installation will be done by Extranet.
All right. So this has, so the existing utility pole shown on the diagram is the new metal pole that Extenet is going to be installing.
That's correct.
Okay, I guess, Mr. President, this is not so much on the merits of the design here, but when I look at the notifications for these, both of which are in the same general locus, the notification list for this particular one has, I'm looking at 9 addresses. The notification for the work at the same location under the Extenet only has 2 notification parcels on it. And there are gobs of parcels here in the area. So I guess through you, I'd ask the clerk how these notification lists were generated.
Clerk, can you answer that?
Through you, Mr. President, the abutters lists are prepared by the utility company generally in consultation with the city assessor, whose list is the official list that the utility companies rely on.
Right. So if I could speak to it for a minute, I assume that we have had more notifications for this because of the length of the construction going from Church to Quincy, whereas I assume that the Extenet proposal, they only took the 2 parcels on either side of Quincy Street, given that their construction is such, so much smaller. They were only installing a couple of feet at that one location, as opposed to the 300-foot span that we have down Somerville.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I think there might be something else going on here, and I'd just like to put a pin in it to follow up with the clerk and with engineering, just because we have other applications from other utilities at different locations, even this evening, that seem to have a much wider notification radius. I just want to make sure that residents are being informed on this. In terms of the design and location, I appreciate the explanation for applicant and don't see a problem with it at this time. Thank you.
Okay, so do you want this referred to committee or?
You know what? I'll come up with a separate text and submit it as an item for the end of the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Okay, so this item will be laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Item number 9 is a grand location application submitted by public hearing, on a grand location application submitted by Comcast to install 32 feet of conduit in Alpine Street from a utility pole to a point to pick up at 13 Alpine Street.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak on the item? Please use the hand icon. And we got Dave Welling. Dave, you have the floor.
Good evening, Dave Llewellyn. I would like to speak in favor of the Comcast petition, starting at utility pole 7-2, excavating to place 1 4-inch PVC conduit, 32 feet plus or minus, to number 13 Alpine Street.
Okay, and are you a representative from Comcast?
Correct.
Okay. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Going once, going twice. Seeing no further comment, I declare this public hearing closed. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this in the council? Councilor Needham would like to express his support. Hearing no further discussion, this item is laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Item number 10 is a public hearing and grand location application submitted by Comcast to install a total of 294 feet of conduit, starting from a utility pole, traveling 17 feet to a proposed manhole at the intersection of South Street and Earl Street, then continuing 182 feet to another proposed manhole in Earl Street, then splitting with 18 feet going from that proposed manhole to private property on Earl Street, and 77 feet going to the rear of 101 South Street.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak on the item? Dave?
Yes, Dave Llewellyn, Comcast. I'd like to speak in favor of the Comcast petition to place 2 4-inch PVC conduits to 101 South Street.
All right, is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak on this? Please use the hand icon. Seeing no further comment, I declare this public hearing closed. On the item, Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. This application looks in order, and I don't have a problem with it. I support it this evening. However, I would draw your attention to page 5 of the application package, which shows for a not larger set of construction than the initial permit we were looking at, what appears to be a much wider catch basin. In fact, what jumps out is notification even sent to the owners of the target, which is all the way across the train tracks from this location. So I thank Comcast for their thoroughness, I suppose, in this, but this is why I think there might be something a little bit hinky going on, and I just wanted to put it on record so that when we have a discussion, we can refer back to this. Thank you.
Sounds like Comcast cares. Any further discussion on the item? Hearing none, this item will be laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Item number 11 is a public hearing in a grand location application submitted by Extenet to install 374 feet of conduit in Great River Road from a manhole to a proposed handhole and then continuing to a small wireless facility near 479 Canal Street.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Please use the hand icon. And I got Rosanna. Rosanna, you have the floor.
Yes, good evening. My name is Rosanna Ferranti here on behalf of Extenet, and we are proposing to install 374 feet of conduit in Great River Road from manhole number 29469 to a proposed handhole, then continuing to a small cell wireless facility near 479 Canal Street, which has been previously approved.
All right, is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak on this item? Please use the hand icon. Seeing no further comment, I declare this public hearing closed. Is there anyone else on the council who wishes to speak on this item? Hearing no further discussion, this item is laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Item number 12 is a public hearing in a grand location application submitted by Extenet to install 103 feet of conduit in Somerville Avenue from a manhole to a proposed handhole and then on to a small wireless facility near 411 Somerville Avenue at Quincy Street.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this item? Rosanna.
Yes, good evening again. Extenet here is proposing to install 103 feet of conduit in Somerville Ave from manhole number 20650 to a proposed handhole, then continuing to a small cell wireless facility near 411 Somerville Ave at Quincy Street, which has been previously approved. And here at this point, I think might be a good time to clarify our application relative to TS Systems. So we are here before you regarding power, and maybe TS Systems can confirm, but I believe they may be here regarding fiber. So that's the distinction in as far as I understand. But again, TS Systems can verify that.
All right, is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak on this? Adam? Did Adam Heller, did you want to speak on this, or is that for another item? All right, I don't see anyone else wishing to speak on this item. Hearing no further discussion, I declare this public hearing closed. Any discussion on the council? Hearing no discussion, this item was laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Item 13 is a public hearing in a grand location application submitted by Extenet to install 94 feet of conduit in Broadway from a manhole to a proposed handhole, then continuing to a small wireless facility at the intersection of Broadway and Boston Ave.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on the item? Rosanna.
Yes, this application is submitted by Extenet to install 94 feet of conduit in Broadway from manhole number 2633 to a proposed handhole, then continuing to a small cell wireless facility at the intersection of Broadway and Boston Ave 691 Broadway. This side has also been previously approved.
All right, is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Please use the hand icon. Seeing no further discussion, I now declare this public hearing closed. Any discussion on the council? Councilor Niedergang says he's not opposed. Seeing no further discussion, this item is laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Item number 14 is a public hearing and grand location application submitted by Extranet to install 86 feet of conduit in Broadway from a manhole to a proposed handhole, then continuing to the small wireless facility near 497 Broadway.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Rosanna?
Yes, Extranet proposes to install 86 feet of conduit in Broadway from manhole number 2569 to a proposed handhold, then continuing to a small cell wireless facility near 497 Broadway. Previously approved.
Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this? Please use the hand icon. Seeing no further discussion, this item, this public hearing is closed. Any discussion from the council? Hearing no discussion, this item is laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Item 15 is a public hearing on a grant of location application submitted by Extranet to install 102 feet of conduit in Broadway from a manhole to a proposed handhole, then continuing to a small wireless facility near 546 Broadway.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Rosanna?
Yes, Extranet proposes to install 102 feet of conduit in Broadway from manhole number 2572 to a proposed handhole, then continuing to a small cell wireless facility near 546 Broadway, previously approved.
Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Please use the hand icon. Seeing no further discussion, I declare this public hearing closed. Anyone on the council wishing to speak? Seeing no discussion, that item is up. Did someone speak?
It's Councilor Niedergang.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yeah, I'm also fine with this one, as well as the previous one, item 14, are both okay by me as the ward councilor. Thank you.
Very good. I see no further discussion. These items are laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Item number 16 is a public hearing on a grant location application submitted by Extranet to install 38 feet of conduit in Revolution Drive from a manhole to a proposed handhole, then on to the small wireless facility near 75 Mystic Ave.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Rosanna?
Yes, Extranet proposes to install 38 feet of conduit in Revolution Drive from manhole number 26211 to a proposed handhold, then continuing to a small cell wireless facility near 75 Mystic Ave, previously approved.
All right, is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Please use the hand icon. Seeing no further comment, I declare this public hearing closed. Any comments from the council? Seeing none, this item is laid on the table for approval. And that was item 16, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, that was item number 16.
All right, let's do a roll call vote for all items laid on the table with the exemption of item number 17.
Mr. President, this then is a roll call vote on the approval of item numbers 3 through 16. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes, please.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of that item. That motion has been approved.
All right, Councilor Ballantyne, I still don't see your people in the audience. Have you been able to get a hold of them?
Yes, so Tricia Brian is in the audience. Her full name is Patricia, so I said Patricia. But I'm wondering, I believe she might have signed in as Tricia.
I still don't see them.
Okay. Can we, they said they've had some difficulties with it, so if we could just lay it on the table, I would appreciate it. And I thought they were there.
All right, this item will remain laid on the table. Next item.
Mr. President, that brings us to item number 18, which is an order submitted by Councilor Ballantyne that the Director of Finance, the Director of Parking, and the Director of SPCD discuss scaling parking permit fees with automobile size and efficiency.
Councilor Ballantyne. You're muted, Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you. I have to repeat myself. Okay. So I submitted this order because there's been a lot of general discussion among community members about alternative uses of our public pathways and alternative parking priorities. So I just wanted to add further to the discussion on this topic. Hence, I put this order in and would request that it's forwarded to Traffic and Parking.
All right, on the item, Councilor Needham.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Councilor Ballantyne, for bringing this up. We were going to look at the parking fees as part of the parking task force that the mayor convened at the beginning of this year, but that task force has been in hiatus since coronavirus hit. Unfortunately, really sadly, I was really looking forward to that work. And all the right people were at the table. It looked very promising. There was good leadership from the administration on it. I see that Councilor Ewan Campen filed an order about that, so I think it will be good to get an update on the administration's plans on it. But, you know, my concern is not just that larger vehicles pay more, they're taking up more space, they're polluting the air, but $40 is just way too little for being able to park your car on the street. And, you know, I want to change that. I want to raise those fees, but in an equitable way. And, you know, that will be a complicated thing to figure out, but I do think it can be figured out. I think there are protections we can put in for people who need them, for people who need to use their cars to go to work, for people who've been in the city for a long time. I think there's a way we can create a much more progressive and equitable parking permit system. And I thank you for putting this in, because this actually isn't something that I had thought of or that I had seen presented as a consideration before, and I think it's an important one to be considered. So thank you.
Councilor Ewan Campen would like to sign on, and Councilor Strezzo, you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. I am absolutely for finding and following greener vision. I do want to make sure that this is an equitable conversation as well, and that lower income families, especially families and delivery drivers, are not penalized because of this, or we find a way to make that possible. I want to make sure that that is really mentioned in this. That's all I have to say, and thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, this item is laid on the table for approval and referred to Traffic and Parking. Next item.
Item number 19 is an order submitted by Councilor Ballantyne that all department heads share their fiscal year 2021 missions and goals and fiscal year 2020 achievements at this council's next meeting on October 8th.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you. So I submitted this order because I get usually a lot of constituent requests about what departmental priorities are. And in the past, I've been able to refer constituents to the budget book in its PDF form, which outlines the department's missions, its past year's successes, and what its goals will be for the upcoming year. However, this year, in order to transition to an online budget software called OpenGov and help ease the workload because of the pandemic and the additional work that was hoisted on our staff, the city staff, we as counselors let the narrative portion slide for the budget review for this past June and July. However, we still need this narrative because there's no written work plan for the year to measure the departments by. I have had a discussion with Mr. Bean about this, and he said that he agreed with me and that he's working with Mr. Mastromboni. So I would like to put this order into finance to just discuss a little further and also have some discussions about the FY22 budget and the narrative portion. So I just ask that this be referred to finance. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, this item is laid on the table for approval and referred to the Finance Committee. Next item. Mr. Clerk, next item.
Mr. President, item number 20 is an order submitted by Councilor Ballantyne that the Director of Finance and the Budget Director discuss ways to improve the user experience for OpenGov.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you. Again, I spoke to Mr. Bean about this. I think the order is pretty self-explanatory. They agreed with this, and I would also request that this is referred to finance.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, this item is laid on the table for approval and referred to finance.
Item 21 is an order submitted by Councilor Ballantyne, the Director of SBCD, update this council on the Missituck Mystic River Bike and Pedestrian Bridge Project.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you. Again, I think the order is pretty self-explanatory, and I was hoping, since I sit on traffic and parking, that the good chair there would take this into his committee to allow us to get an update from the administration.
Any further discussion?
So if this could be referred to traffic and parking, thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, I'll comment on this quickly because it's in my ward and I've been following this bridge, which I totally support. I know a lot of you got emails over the week asking for us to support the bridge on the assumption that something must have changed. I followed up with the mayor on this, with my state rep, and I followed up with one of the constituents who emailed me about this. There's been no change to the bridge. I think residents got an email from a pedestrian organization who advocates for, who's advocating for this bridge, and they're just afraid that the casino won't follow through with financing because of COVID. But there has been no changes that the mayor or any of the state delegation or anyone involved in this is aware of. But I do think it's good to have a conversation about it. So this item will be laid on the table for approval and referred to the Traffic Committee. Next item.
Item 22 is an order submitted by Councilor Ballantyne that the Director of Finance and the Director of SBCD discuss potential appropriations for requests from Somerville Cares, from restaurants and bars, arts and cultural organizations, and other groups.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I submitted this order because the council has been receiving requests for considerations of appropriation, and I think it would be good to have a discussion within finance with the administration to hear how the administration is prioritizing these requests.
Any further discussion?
No, just to finance, please, Mr. President.
All right, seeing no further discussion, this item is laid on the table for approval and referred to the Finance Committee.
Item number 23 is an order submitted by Councilor Ballantyne, the Director of SBCD, provide an update on the goal data for Summer Vision 2030 in time for this council's next meeting on October 8th.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you. I think the order is pretty self-explanatory. I would just ask, Mr. President, that we lay this on the table. Well, that it's self-explanatory and that it just be given to the director of SPCD.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, this item is laid on the table for approval and with a copy sent to the director of SBCD.
Item 24 is an order submitted by Councilor Ballantyne. The director of SPCD inspect the trees along Broadway from Veterans Cemetery to Route 16 and replace the dead and dying trees.
Councilor Ballantyne.
I would just ask that this be approved. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, this item is laid on the table for approval.
Item 25 is an order submitted by Councilor Niedergang and Councilor Mba that the Director of Sustainability and Environment and the Commissioner of Public Works report to this council on assertions that most plastic is no longer being recycled and that it costs more to process as recycling than as trash, and report whether updated guidance should be provided to the city's residents.
All right, Councilor Ewan Camper would like to sign on. Any discussion?
Mr. President.
Councilor Ba.
Thank you. And thank you, the Honorable Niedergang, for, putting this forward. This is really great. We had a conversation about it. I guess for people who are not aware about what is going on, there was an article that aired on NPR on September 11. How big oil misled the public into believing plastic was recycled. So the industry spent millions telling people to recycle. Because as one former top industry insider told NPR, selling recycling sold plastics. It wasn't true. So here's the basic problem. All used plastic can be turned into new things, but picking it up, sorting it out, and melting it down is expensive. Plastic also degrades each time it is reused, meaning it can't be reused more than once or twice. So on the other hand, new plastic is cheap to make. It's made from oil and gas, as we all know, and it's almost always less expensive and of better quality to just, start at fresh. So the purpose of this order is that we need to have a candid and an honest conversation about what works and what doesn't work with plastic recycling. And we will dive into even looking at the procurement process, the life cycle of our waste stream. I just wanted to give that background. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Councilor Ballantyne and Ewan Camper would like to sign on. I'd like to sign on as well and highly recommend an episode of Adam Ruins Everything if people would like to learn more about this. Lance Davis, Councilor Davis would like to sign on. And Klingon. Any further discussion? And Scott. The whole council would like to sign on. Any further discussion? This item is laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Item number 26 is a resolution submitted by Councilor Niedergang that this council and the administration consider policy recommendations that are conveyed in the Somerville Cares Fund update report of August 25th.
On the item, Councilor Niedergang.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Ballantyne referred to this in her previous order, but I actually wanted to read just a couple of the policy recommendations from this excellent report that we received and that's attached here. But before I do that, Mr. President, I'd like to ask if Councilor Ewan Campen can give a brief summary of the report. He wrote it up in his newsletter in an elegant paragraph that really captures the power of the report and the extreme concern that I think we all need to have that this report so well conveys. So I would ask if Councilor Ewan Campen, he can convey that better than I can. And then I'd like to have the floor back to just read a couple of the policy proposals, just to give a flavor of them so that we can start considering them. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Ewan Campen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and through you, thank you very much to Councilor Niedergang and to Councilor Ballantyne for drawing attention to this report from the Somerville Cares Foundation. I think it is an incredibly important report, and it's a very good reminder for all of us in government to keep our priorities straight. So the fact is that the pandemic is nowhere near over, and the economic devastation has been catastrophically worse for people who are already struggling. And what many of us have found so surreal over the past few months is that for many Somerville residents, we're beginning to settle into a new normal. And, you know, especially for folks who are relatively well off, who still are stably employed, while the pandemic has been incredibly disruptive and tragic and horrifying, it has not really had a catastrophic effect on our livelihoods. And if you read this report, it makes it clear that for thousands of families in Somerville, the impacts have been basically unimaginable. And this is not necessarily folks who email the city council or advocate to have their issues prioritized. And I think that's why one of the reasons this report is so important. So to briefly summarize, the CARES Fund has raised over $660,000 to date from local donors, generous people in Somerville. And they have now distributed all of that to nearly 1,300 Somerville families. The majority of these families prefer to speak a language other than English and have had limited access to state and federal aid. And many of them have had a total or near total loss of income since March. Many report that they are having trouble meeting their basic needs for food, stable housing, and internet connectivity with an eviction moratorium that is currently set to expire in mid-October. Of course, none of these challenges can be solved at the municipal level alone, but it is important, I think, for all of us to do everything in our power to help. And so as we continue to work on all of the issues that we face in Somerville, I think this report is really helpful to keep these stark facts in mind and to keep our priorities straight. So I'm very glad that this agenda item is before us now. Thank you to Councillor Niedergang, and I look forward to discussing this further.
All right, Councillor Niedergang.
Thank you, Councilor Ewan-Camp. And I have to say, just thinking about what so many families are going through, frankly, it just makes me want to cry. It's unimaginable to me to just all of a sudden have no income and have no prospects for income soon. I want to read just a few of the proposals in this report. I'm not saying that I necessarily support them, to be honest. I haven't thought it through enough, and I think they need a lot of discussion. They're fairly radical proposals, and I don't think would be easy to implement, but I think these are the kinds of things at this time that we need to be thinking about in terms of protecting families in our city. It says state and local government must act now to prevent a cataclysmic wave of homelessness, hunger, poverty, disease, and death this winter. So here are some recommendations. We recommend the Somerville Mayor and City Council move now to cancel rental arrears accrued during the pandemic and extend the eviction ban until August 2022 on the basis of public health and safety. It would be unconscionable to resume evictions this January given the scope of this crisis, and it will take years for most of our applicants to return to any semblance of financial stability. Ithaca, New York canceled rent for COVID-19. Another recommendation, we recommend the city revive its anti-hunger effort and guarantee the provision of weekly groceries to everyone, regardless of immigration status. This was something the city did for many months and did extremely well, with volunteers helping out and people in the school department carrying a lot of the load. But it appears that the hunger crisis is not over. And so we need to think about, is this something we should be doing again? We recommend the city use its power to gather outstanding bills from residents and reach collectively bargained settlements with utilities and telecommunications corporations for reduced rates, reasonable payment horizons, no cutoffs, and no credit score impact. So this is a very interesting idea. I have no idea if it's legal or possible, but just imagine if people can't have a phone because they can't pay for the phone service fees, how are they going to find a job or be able to communicate or do anything? I mean, without a phone these days, without a computer, you're essentially hopeless. Another recommendation, we recommend the mayor work with the largest corporations and developers in Somerville to build an ongoing institutional donor base for the Somerville CARES Fund. The vast majority of the current 2,000 donors are individuals giving an average of $330. We applaud the generosity of everyday Somervillians, but the burden must shift to those best able to meet the community's needs. So those are some of the recommendations. I just urge everybody who cares about this to read this report. It's got a lot of charts and graphs, but the text is only 6 pages. Large print, you can read it in about 10 minutes. And I'd like this to go to committee. I'm not sure where, maybe Housing and Community Development, but I think this deserves consideration and discussion by the council and the administration. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the item? And no further discussion. Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just going to ask, I'm happy to take it in Housing and Community Development.
Very good. Any further discussion?
Thank you.
No discussion. Oh, thank you. This item is laid on the table for approval and referred to the Housing Committee. Next item.
Item 27 is a communication submitted by Councilor Niedergang reporting on the Traffic Commission's activities from May to September of 2020.
Councilor Niedergang.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, as most of you know, during this period, there hasn't been a lot of traffic and parking, and so there hasn't been a lot of traffic and parking issues, and the Commission has really not done a lot, but let me just go over it very quickly. The Commission did pass 20-mile-per-hour safety zones, added 50 streets in West Somerville to that network of 20-mile-per-hour safety zones. In addition, other things that the Commission dealt with and approved were a number of fire lanes around the city, handicap parking spots, extensions of bus stops for public safety, restrictions on parking for public safety, and extension and adding of no parking zones. And that's my report. Thank you.
Any discussion? Hearing none, this item is laid on the table and placed on file. Next item.
Item number 28 is an item of unfinished business. It's a resolution submitted by Councilor McLaughlin that the mayor update this council in executive session on alleged suspicious activity in the DPW fleet yard in March 2020.
On the item, Councilor Scott.
Yes, Mr. President, will we be addressed by the mayor this evening?
It will not be.
Has the mayor or anybody from the mayor's office been in contact with you, Mr. President, about when to schedule this executive session?
I did speak to Ms. Weber today, and she said that they hope to update us at the next meeting.
Okay. Is there... Well, thank you, Mr. President. I certainly hope that's true. I'll follow up with you to see what kind of encouragement the City Council can help provide. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, this item is laid on the table with no vote taken. Next item.
Item number 29 is a report of the Committee on Confirmation of Appointments and Personnel Matters, which met on September 17th.
Councilor Rossetti.
Mr. President, thank you. All members were in attendance that evening. Also joining us was Annie Connor from the Mayor's Office, Ellen Collins of Personnel, Nancy Bacci of Health and Human Services, Captain Rich Levy of the Police Department, Jesse Moose of OSPCD, and Kate Van Sleet representing the Library Board of Trustees. We had many items on the agenda that evening. The report, of course, is public for anybody to review. We did confirm the appointment of Rachel Taylor, the appointment of Rachel Taylor as Animal Control Officer. Our next item was requesting the confirmation of appointment of Nancy Solomon as Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission. This brought with it tremendous conversation with the applicant. She previously served as a member of the Human Rights Commission, and she stated that she wanted to do more policy initiatives building on what she learned while doing casework and fixing the gaps. She began her position as Manager of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion which was in 2017, and she has served on the commission before us this evening, beginning in approximately 2012. Ms. Solomon has ideas for the HRC to grow stronger, but the ADA and equity work encompasses more of her time, which is her responsibilities. Councillor Scott noted that one of the roles is for the HRC to respond to complaints of those who feel that their rights have been violated. We were informed that the commission report that I had on file that we had last received from Clerk John Long last February showed that there were 3 openings on this commission. But what I learned during the meeting this evening is that they only have 2 individuals on the actual commission. There are many vacancies, so they have not ever been able to meet quorum. The restructuring of the commission to make it functional was an ongoing goal for Ms. Salamone. Councillor Scott noted that this position should not be a full-time city employee who already has a full workload, as that sets both the commission and the director up for failure. The commission needs funding and a separate position. It was his opinion. The applicant added that a bigger issue than quorum is for the commission to be trained to fulfill its mission and objectives and better address the needs of the community. She wanted to empower the body. Ms. Bocci was in attendance that evening. She is the direct supervisor of this position, and I emphasized to Ms. Bocci the critical nature of this particular commission, especially in addressing the current concerns of the community in today's day and age. This commission would be integral in coordinating with the newly created position for racial and social justice as well. I urged Ms. Bocci to put this commission at the forefront of stepping it up to assist the applicant in finding members of the community who wanted to serve on this commission, that we needed to do better than we had been in promoting the openings on this council, on this commission. Councillor Scott clarified when we were getting ready to vote the request of the administration of this position. Councillor Scott clarified that his vote would not be a reflection on Ms. Salamone, but on the resources that he felt the commission needs. I, after the vote, did stress to Ms. Salamone that the vote itself was not a reflection of her service or strengths. The request was not approved by a vote of 2 in favor, 3 against. The motion, the request to appoint failed. Those in favor were Rossetti and Strezzo. Those against were Scott, Baba, and Klingon. Next, we had before us the request to reappoint Joseph P. Lynch Jr. to the Licensing Commission. After a deep discussion with him, that recommendation was unanimously approved. We also looked at a request of the Board of Library Trustees, which also was unanimously approved. We then discussed a long outstanding item that the Director of Personnel provide to the City Council, a monthly vacancy report. The details of this discussion is in my report. We have kept this item in committee and will be bringing it back to the committee at our very next committee meeting. Lastly, we also reviewed the confirmation of the appointments of members to the new Memorialization Committee, which was unanimously approved. No further items were before the committee that evening. Mr. President, I submit this report for approval.
Councilor Ballantyne submits the committee report for approval.
Councilor Rossetti. Councilor Rossetti.
I'm sorry. Well, Councilor Rossetti, I can't see you, so I don't know where you are. Councilor Niedergang on the item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Councilor Rossetti for that report, and I want to thank the committee for the thorough discussion that they engaged in regarding the Human Rights Commission. I can remember at one time around 10 years ago, the Human Rights Commission was an active and powerful body. So active, in fact, that they got up in the mayor's face about some things, and there was quite a bit of controversy and bad blood. And unfortunately, after that, the Human Rights Commission was simply allowed to kind of lapse and disappear as an active body in our city's public life. There's rarely been enough members to reach a quorum because the mayor hasn't appointed people to it. And as the committee stated, the Human Rights Commission has not had adequate staffing to be able to carry out its function. When it did have adequate staffing and a group of zealous and capable members, it did great work at a time when the issues that it had to deal with actually were even much more serious than they are now. So I am glad that the committee has raised these issues, and I call upon the administration to spiff up this committee, to fill it, to staff it, to put some money into staffing it, and really give us a body that will help. And it's necessary again today with all that's going on with the federal government, oppression of immigrants and ICE and these issues. These are critical issues for a lot of our citizens. We need a strong and active Human Rights Commission to help them out. Thank you.
Councilor Scott.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the chair for the report, and thank you to my colleague from Ward 5 for that perspective, which is one that I think many people in the city aren't aware of. This is something that not only has this fate befallen the Human Rights Commission, but also the Disabilities Commission and the Women's Commission. And it is, I'm grateful for the attention of my colleagues and exceedingly grateful for the leadership of the chair. I think this is an important statement of our values and where we feel we need to be devoting resources, especially at a time when we are creating a new director level position to deal with racial and social justice, to augment our director of equity and inclusion. We should absolutely be devoting resources to bodies that have already been created by this council in law to pursue these aims. So I also would like to highlight that there were several discussions this evening of extraordinary importance. It may not be the regular city council meeting that happens every other Thursday, but the work of this committee, especially that evening, was incredibly significant. Issues raised, and something even as mundane as the question of whether or not our animal control officers should be dispatched by 911 and managed by the police department. So I just give all respect and congratulations to the chair and admiration to the chair for this, and also encourage folks who want to get into the weeds of how governments work and how we continually try to make them work better. This is a good watch. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mr. President, if I could add, separate from the report, a follow-up comment to the report.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I spoke with Mr. Kress today because I really just wanted to be sure that, as we said in committee, this wasn't a reflection of Ms. Salamone herself. And with this being rejected, this confirmation of the appointment to Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission being rejected by the committee, I wanted to be sure that I didn't know where it stood for her salary. Her salary will remain as is because, as we know, she will remain in this acting role until the administration comes back before us with a newer request. Now, that request may be a different individual as Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission, or the request may come back from the administration in a different shape and form, given the discussion that was held during this committee meeting. So the jury is still out on what will happen next, but the message is being sent by the vote that was taken the evening and the discussion that was held that evening in committee. I just wanted that to be known to my colleagues. Mr. President, thank you.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, and I apologize if I missed this, to the chair of the committee, Rossetti. Does the ordinance for the Human Rights Commission require a city staff person?
I do not know that answer.
Councilor Ballantyne, I can answer that question because I asked
Thank
Ms.
you.
Connor that earlier. There is nothing in the ordinance that requires it to be a city staff position.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? I just want to comment very quickly on this because when I saw the committee report, I was really kind of taken back that Nancy was not approved, who is somebody that I greatly value as an employee in the city and as someone who does a good job representing the community. And I definitely hear everything that's being said right now. I was tempted to sever the item, but I do believe in the sincerity of the votes against, that this is not about Nancy, who again, I think does great work and is a valuable asset to the community. But as Councilor Niedergang said, there's been issues like this for quite a while about people being understaffed, overstretched. It goes beyond the Human Rights Commission. I raised an issue about the rodent, the rat czar the other day, and how much time she gets to spend working on rodents as opposed to other issues. So it seems like people are being stretched out a lot, and I just hope that people will take this up with confirmations with the head of Health and Human Services and not just the subordinates who are doing the work that's expected of them. So any further discussion on this? Hearing no discussion, this item is laid on the table for approval and to be accepted as submitted. Next item.
Item number 30, Mr. President, is a report of the Committee on Housing and Community Development, which met on September 16th.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, I can hear in the background somewhere in my building a fire alarm going off. And if you can hear it and if it is distracting, let me know and I can ask to come back if that's okay. But I don't know if you can hear it in the background.
You can't hear it, but you should evacuate immediately, Councilor Strezzo. Or do a fast report. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. The Office of, the Committee of Housing and Community Development met September 16th. We had all members present. Councilor Mabah had to leave earlier, around 7:30. We also had present Annie Connor, Sarah Lewis from the Mayor's Office, Sarah Lewis from OSPCD, Melissa Woods from OSPCD, and Michael Filoni, Ellen Schachter, Susan Chimney, all from OSPCD, Linda Dubuque from the Treasury, David Shapiro from the City Solicitor's Office, and Nick Antanovica from ISD. We had a agenda with a lot of discussion about the eviction moratorium that is set to expire in October of 2020. And so starting with that, the first agenda item was talking about the Tenant Notification Act and seeing where the city is on that. The Housing Department is working with the Communications Department on 2 mailers to send out to most owners, and will have the information on what's happening with the court system before the mailing. The mailing will go out the first week of October and will have information about rental system and status of moratorium, and with access to resources in the city to avoid them. Councilor Mabah asked if it was going to be available in multiple languages. Ms. Schachter stated that there will be a 1-page flyer available and information will be available on the website in multiple languages. And she stated that 72% of residents that come to the offices are non-English speakers, so that and that the director of the next agenda item was that Director of Inspectional Services report to the Housing and Community Development Committee on the implementation. So with that, with the Tenant Notification Act, once the information comes out, how is ISD going to respond to this. Mr. Antanavica said from ISD he reviewed the process, that when someone calls the number of reports that issue and apply for the appropriate assistance. He stated that everyone in ISD is aware of the Tenant Notification Act and the process. And there were questions asked if the entire apartment building, Councilor Ewan Campen was asking about the process. If the complaint goes to ISD, what happens if it's an entire building and individual complaints are coming through that building, and the city solicitor's office will follow up with that. And the next, so preparing the city for if the eviction moratorium expires, what is it going to look like? Some of the work, the next agenda item was talking about with the eviction moratorium ending and the federal moratorium ending in December, there will be some questions about the actions during this time that if people cannot be evicted related to COVID-19, there is a Somerville health moratorium that's in place, and that the order came from ISD. No one can be removed from their home while the moratorium is in place. We're going to see how we're about to see live and how, the effect that this is going to have on Somerville, and also where this state legislation lies versus where city will lie with how this gets enacted. We're talking about that Councilor Klingon had already put it through an order to halt any evictions, and Mr. Shapiro from the law department agreed to look into the question about constables and how constables at a local level will play a role in the eviction process if it does expire. We also addressed, we talked a little bit about the goal to that the administration develop with this Council Committee on Housing and Community Development a plan to achieve 30% deed restricted units. Ms. Lewis from OCPCD spoke about this, and the work is also happening in land use, so it's probably that Ms. Lewis stated that it will take extreme measures to get to 20%. It's probably a stretch goal to try to get to 30%, or really challenging in reality. The next agenda item was talking about establishing a goal for the target number of deed restricted units so that a path to that goal can be analyzed as part of the next housing needs assessment and discussed as part of Somerville 2040 process. First, Ms. Lewis and Ms. Woods from OSPCD stepped forward to talk about this, and they were hoping to provide an update on Summer Vision 2040 at a later date, and that they're talking about, Ms. Lewis is talking about doing a public hearing to get the Summer Vision 20% of housing units goal for the city, and that talk about a public hearing about that will happen in the near future. And we also had on the agenda one of the agenda items that was in our last city council meeting, that the superintendent of inspectional services, the city treasurer, and the city solicitor appear before the council to discuss, or appropriate committee, about the implementation of ordinance 8.3 as to the denial of building permits to those who have failed to pay city imposed fines. And Councilor White was present to talk about this as well in the committee. And so Mr. Antanavica had reviewed this with the city solicitor's office, and the staff are enforcing the ordinance, he stated. And if there are a number of violations with the developer, and after 12 months, the city puts a lien on the property. Ms. Dubuque from the Treasury Department talked about the small business owners being denied a license due to not paying taxes on water bills, and how her team spends a lot of time arguing with small business owners, and that she stated that it did not make sense since the city's tax collection rate is over 99%. If tax bill is unpaid, the property owner is charged 14% interest, tax title charged 16%, and the city will not lose out on dollars. Mr. Buick stated the ordinance is working to collect fees and fines on the parcels. We had discussions about the importance to hold up permits for a specific owner because of a parcel and how time intensive it is in involving title searches across the board and how hard it is to research and address. Councilor White talked about the cost benefit analysis and asking to adopt the provisions to lien properties and to place liens on properties where the violations occurred. Councilor Ewan-Campen stated the law department feels the city is enforcing as per the ordinance. Councilor White stated that the ordinance authorizing the city to withhold the issuance of permits does not require the recording of liens first. And then Mr. Shapiro from the law department stepped in to say that the ordinance and the city of Somerville have adopted was based on a state statute that required a fine be unpaid for 12 months or more before a permit could be denied. In 2016, that statute removed the language that required that the fine had to be unpaid for 12 months. And Councilor White stated that he would like to see the city amend the current ordinance to follow the current state statute. That is kept in committee. And last on the agenda was that the administration provide an update on the disparity study regarding racial equity in city spending as submitted in September of 2019. Councilor Ewan-Campen asked if City of Somerville wanted to set a goal on how much money is spent with minorities and women-owned businesses. Ms. Connor stated the city would need the disparity study to help establish this type of policy, and that Ms. Weber and Ms. Allen have been working together cost estimates for a consultant to work on the disparity study, and will have information in the coming months. The request for proposal will get a consultant on board, so they're stating that the process is going to happen. I put forth a resolution that the administration commits to setting goals for city contracting with minority and women-owned businesses. And so that also will be kept in committee. I do really quick, council and colleagues, thanks for sticking with me here. I just want to make a follow-up to the report and talk about the devastation, as we have been talking about the devastation of how housing is in dire crisis. I followed up with Ms. Ellen Schachter, BOSPD, just on where applications were for and the necessity of rental assistance and the need for rental assistance. She said they have a backlog of 2 months now for rental assistance. The report that the demand is huge. It is huge right now, and the organization that processes resident assistance for families in transition applications, which help provide rental assistance, has a backlog of 2,600 applications right now, a backlog of 2,600 applications. She also mentioned that her department is in, they had a bunch of volunteers and they need a new batch of volunteers, and they were originally seeking bilingual. They need bilingual volunteers, but they right now are struggling to find even bilingual volunteers, so they're just accepting any volunteers. So the office needs volunteers with helping families fill out the rental assistance applications to get into that backlog of 2,600 applications before them. That's at this point. So there's desperate need for volunteers right now. I offer this review of this minutes, accepted as submitted. Thank you very much.
All right, Councilor Sgrezzo moves to accept the committee report as submitted. On that, Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the work that the committee did. I think it's necessary for me to stress a point. It was certainly not my intention. I don't believe members of this council's intention with respect to the order that I submitted to have someone talk about unpaid water bills. My concern was directed basically to those developers and property owners who failed to pay building code and health code violations, and then those violations mount up, and then they try to obtain a building permit or even a special permit, for instance. So that's what I was interested in. I've never heard of that actually being looked at. I know there might have been some talk about it might involve some work, but I don't think they've gotten to that point yet. So I want to emphasize that to make sure that sort of the import of what I was looking for is not lost, and you know, what some other folks may have discussed at the committee meeting. So that's really the drive of my point. And basically, I would like to see the ordinance that we've enacted that requires a 12-month period. I'm sorry, a 12-month period before the lien could take place, to basically mirror what state law now provides. So I don't know whether perhaps it would be most effective for me just to submit not something at the next council meeting, and then it can go to legislative matters as opposed to doing something on the floor now. So basically, those are my thoughts on, you know, what I had heard at the council, at the committee meeting. Thank you.
On that, Councilor Strezzo?
Mr. President, I do want to thank Councilor White for elaborating on that. And would there be a good, would now be a good time to make a motion for Councilor White to make a motion and send it to legislative matters?
Councilor White?
I prefer to actually take a look at the existing ordinance and, you know, craft language that I think would be appropriate, so it will make it easier for the Legislative Matters Committee. I don't think a delay for my submission until the next council meeting would have an effect on it, so that would be my preference.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Oh, thank you.
Hearing no discussion, this item is laid on the table to be accepted and submitted. Councilor Ballantyne moves to take item number 17 off the table. And we do have, oh, I thought I had it. Where'd she go? Oh, no. Tricia, oh, there you are. Okay. I go with Patricia O'Brien in the audience. I'm going to unmute you, seeing no objections to allowing Ms. O'Brien to speak. You have the floor. Patricia, are you there? You're
Mr. President,
yourself.
Mr. President, while she unmutes her phone, let me just say that we're returning to item number 17, which is a resolution submitted by Councilor Ballantyne supporting Tufts University students and the Tufts Labor Coalition in their advocacy efforts for a healthy and supportive working environment for Tufts dining workers.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Patricia, are you there? Your hand is raised, but you are self-muted. You have to unmute yourself. Patricia, I can tell. There you go. You got it.
Okay. Am I all set now?
We can hear you. Go right ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to thank the whole council for standing by us. This has been an emotional time right now.
Go ahead. Go.
I want to go in the other room, please. My husband's listening to it on the phone, and he's like, he can't hear me or whatever, I don't know. But I just want to thank everyone, all the counselors for standing by us. The students have been wonderful. They're great. But I've lived in Somerville my whole life. I've grown here. I've grown up here, born and raised, and I love Somerville. I mean, I grew up in Slumerville, and Somerville always had your back, and Somerville is home. And I always felt like that. That's why we want to thank the whole dining establishment wants to thank the city of Somerville for standing by us. It's been an emotional week. We had a COVID scare, and I'm now on administrative leave with my other co-steward. The most important thing to us was our co-workers, and that's what we stood up for. So I'll be home for a little while. I don't know how long. I don't know if I'll still have a job, but we just wanted to thank you, because you know what? We've been standing up for the employees and no one else did, but you have always stood up for us. Last year when we were going for the union, You stood up for us and you stood up for us again. So we want to just thank you so much for everything you've done. And I'm so proud of this city and proud of this board. And thank you very much.
All right, any further discussion on this? Council Ballantyne? Yeah, Council Ballantyne?
Mr. President. Yeah, so I didn't hear anything that was said, but I'm sure Tricia said it wonderfully.
I could hear her clearly, so I think everyone heard her.
Okay, excellent. I will continue to follow up with her in the coming week. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Councilor Scott? And now you're muted, Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, I just wanted to make sure I understood clearly, because we heard some very moving testimony with relation to this matter and the COVID scares with workers at Tufts. Were these organizers placed on, did I hear that they've been placed on administrative leave by Tufts as a result of that comment?
Yes. Yes. Tuesday there was a scare. A coworker received a phone call that her child tested positive. Tufts associate director wanted to keep that dining hall open and serve the students. We refused to do that. Christine and myself told them, when I went down there, finally, they let the people go home. I said, listen, they're scared. They don't know what's going on. The protocol that we thought was they were supposed to close and sanitize the whole place within 24 hours, and then they could open. That's not what they wanted to do. And Christine and I refused to, we talked to the workers that wanted to stay and cleanse could, but if they felt uncomfortable, we felt that they should be let to go home. They went home, most of them went home. But the associate director and the manager, which was Christine's actual manager, really gave her a hard time. They're doing an investigation right now on what, we don't know. She was called into a meeting yesterday. I was going to be her shop steward, and I was refused to be her shop steward. So we had to call another one down, Zara, and she went in. They recorded her conversation, and then they put her on administrative leave. Today, they did the same thing to me. They didn't record my conversation, but and I asked questions. Am I being targeted? Am I having any type of retaliation? But they said no, that they're just doing an investigation. I said, on me, on Christine? They said no. And they told me after the meeting that I was on administrative leave.
Thank you, Patricia. Ms. President, I find all of this just increasingly concerning. I was impressed at the time. I have always been impressed by the courage of labor organizers like this. And this just highlights how much courage it takes. So once again, thank you. I won't speak for my colleagues, but I stand ready to do anything in my power to assist you and to ensure that you are treated fairly and equitably in your pursuits. Mr. President, I'll have to do some thinking about how to respond to this. I leave it to you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no, don't go anywhere, Patricia. We have a few more comments. Councilor Strezzo?
Thank you, Mr. President. For you to Patricia, can I ask you a quick, first, thank you for your kind comments. I stand. Can you hear me okay? I'm not muted. Okay. Are you, when you're on administrative leave, are you currently being paid? Is it paid administrative leave?
Yes.
Or, okay. So that makes me feel a little better. But and Councilor Ballantyne, thank you again for bringing this to the council's attention. Can we continue to follow up more as this progresses and the situation? Can you update the council, or how can we?
Yeah, I'll keep in contact with, with Tatiana, and any questions that she has, I'd be happy to answer. She's been very kind to me. She's been very kind to all of the staff, Paul, and a lot of people, and we feel very secure with her and comfortable with her. She's a very wonderful woman.
Wow, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I have any further questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Clinton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, thank you to the good counselor from Ward 2 for asking on that clarification. I had, the way I had heard it, I thought it had something to do with the COVID possible outbreak contact, and so that's why maybe a bunch of staff was put on leave. So to hear this, that somebody who spoke out, who had the courage to speak out against tough administration at that public hearing that we had, for them to be retaliated against, and I remember hearing the testimony and thinking, wow, this is really how it should be. The truth needs to come out of an institution like this, and you know, we have many union brothers and sisters in that facility, in that institution, and you know, if this is how they're going to treat like whistleblowers, if you will, or people who have the audacity to actually speak up about the unsafe conditions they're working in, this is really a bad precedent. I'm going to be watching this closely, and I really hope that you know, Ms. O'Brien isn't this retaliation. I hope that they understand there's a lot of eyes on this situation now. And I am really surprised, and I shouldn't be saying I'm surprised, but I'm disgusted that if this employee is getting targeted, and this sends a message to all of our union brothers and sisters in there have been put at risk, and they've been working hard, and you know, there's many different unions. I know that Patricia's union will have her back, and that's what we do. Solidarity to you, Patricia. And I just want to say that I'll be watching this closely, and Tufts, you know, Tufts is on notice. I mean, if you're going to retaliate against people who speak the truth, you're going to have a problem with this council, at least with me, that's for sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any further comment? Just to note,
I would just.
Council Ballantyne.
Sorry.
Go right
No,
ahead.
I just wanted to thank you. So I'm going to have to listen to Patricia's words. I did know what she was going to say this evening, and I am, as I've said before, with you from beginning to end on this, and will you know, look forward to hearing what happens over the next week. And I'm so happy to hear the positive words from my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you, all of you. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I did just want to note there are representatives from Tufts in the audience, so I hope this message was heard loud and clear. Councilor Barr wants to comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to also thank Patricia for the courage to come and speak. And I also just want to let you know that in the future, even if we don't, you know, like some of my colleagues who are not speaking, know that we all stand with you. So I just want you to know that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're a wonderful man too.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, this item is laid on the table for approval. Back to the regular order of business.
Mr. President, we move to item number 31, which is a report of Committee on Land Use, which met on September 15th.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll give a brief recap. The committee met for a joint public hearing with the Planning Board to consider 5 zoning amendments. I want to say, although a few of these were recommended for approval tonight, we cannot actually take action on them until we receive a recommendation from the Planning Board, and due to a miscommunication, that has not happened yet. So I will be asking that this report, I believe the correct thing would be to leave it on the table until we have a Planning Board recommendation at our next meeting, hopefully. So 2 items were unanimously recommended for approval. One of them was an amendment, map change amendment from Councillor Niedergang to upzone 56 Murdoch Street to the urban residential district. We also unanimously approved a small text correction to the cannabis zoning ordinance to correct a mistake, basically, that was introduced during the overhaul process, and to make it consistent with our original cannabis zoning. One item that was brought by a property owner, LaCourte Realty LLC, to upzone their property on Miriam Street. This was kept in committee, and as the chair, I do not anticipate further action. This was met with significant questions from the committee, and also significant opposition from tenants of other LaCourte properties. And it also falls in the Union Square East area, which, as we all know, Councillor Scott and the planning department are working on an overlay district for with the community there. And it is not my intention to actually take action on any property owner requests in that area. Two items were kept in committee that I do anticipate action on in the coming weeks and months. The committee, these two items were being heard for the first time by members of the committee, so there's more to discuss. One of these is a proposed upzoning that I submitted on a stretch of properties along the McGrath Highway outside Union Square. A member of Ward 3 requested some additional community dialogue on that, and I am looking forward to doing that, and then bringing this back to committee as soon as possible. And an additional item is a proposed upzoning of several properties in Gilman Square that was introduced by members of the public, including many members of the Gilman Square Neighborhood Association. This item, the public hearing for this, we heard from a number of supporters, and we also heard opposition from a property owner whose building is not proposed for any change. It is currently in the fabrication district, and this property owner and his lawyer spoke against the proposal. And given that this is a semi-complex proposal in some ways that many councillors were hearing for the first time and had questions on, we're going to keep it in committee. I've also asked Councillor Klingon to briefly weigh in tonight, as I know many of the changes are in his ward. He's been working very closely with the community, and because it's a 5-person committee, land use, we actually can't legally hear from Councillor Klingon in committee unless we make it a committee of the whole. So I've asked Councillor Klingon to briefly speak on this tonight, to shed some light on what the community process is and what his thoughts as the ward councillor are. And I'll also say that this item will be on the agenda for next Tuesday. So again, we can't actually take action on these recommendations. I would ask that the committee report be laid on the table and take it up at a future meeting.
Yes, well, Councilor Ewan-Campen, we can actually approve the committee report, and the zoning changes will show up as unfinished business on the next agenda.
Very good, Mr. President. Thank you.
So Councilor Ewan-Campen moves to approve the committee report as submitted. On the item, Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, yeah. So I was on the meeting, and I had wanted to speak, but as we all know, there becomes a quorum issue as a body. So I appreciate the brief moment to speak here, because I was really chomping at the bit. One of the things I wanted to get across to folks is that it was my intention all along on my side of that square in Gilman Square on the Medford Street side to always be MR6. I had worked with the community, and we had spoken about a possible overlay to get like bonus floors and so on. So as far as like height goes, I had always intended, so it's my wish that it is MR6, and it had always been. And the community realized that, you know, we were sort of, we made a mistake, like we were new to the, you know, the zoning and how the process was going to play out in the future, and what might be in place by the time we have somebody that's interested in developing something there. So that they went ahead and they flew out and got like 15 signatures, and they could have got many, many more, because it is the will of this particular community in this area to have, especially with the topography as it is, with the old the elderly building that's in Ward 1 and the high school and such, that I see no problem with it. I again, I'm full support of this map change. some of the comments that were made at the meeting by some of the folks who objected, the lawyer, Mr. Dash, and the building owner. I take some objection because I had some conversations with him early on, and I know that he is, he's now pushing the setback thing, but essentially the community's will was to keep that fabrication, as Dan Bartman put it in, and I think that that has something to do with his current position on the change. So that being said, I hope you will all support this map change that the community's put forth. As I said, it is my will and my wish to upzone that particular side of the square, with it being on a transit node and having a T station coming right in. I think we need to increase our housing stock, as well as our affordable housing stock, and I think this area is ripe for it. And so again, that's my 2 cents on that. I'll be speaking to the planning board also on this, and then probably again to you also. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, the committee report is laid on the table and accepted as submitted.
Item number 32, Mr. President, is a report of the Committee on Legislative Matters, which met on September 17th.
Councilor Davis.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. So the Committee on Legislative Matters did meet. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull up the report, which has disappeared from my screen. Bear with me a moment. Everyone was present other than Councilor Rossetti, who had a conflict that night and was hoping to, ultimately, I guess, couldn't get a clear enough signal to join us. We took up, it was a relatively short meeting considering the number of things that that we were able to accomplish, and my computer is not opening the report. So I'm going to go from memory. The primary, the first item that we took up was the demolition review ordinance. There was actually very little debate on that because we had taken that up at the previous meeting and essentially determined that that it was finalized, but we wanted to have a final document before us, and so decided to leave it in committee, provide folks an opportunity to provide comments and review in advance of an actual vote, and then go ahead and take action at the following meeting. So we, I'm trying to remember, I think Councilor Newdigang expressed his support, and we ultimately, Councilor Ewan-Campbell was recused from all votes on that item, and ultimately the recommendation of approval was passed 4-0. We also took up a recommendation from the administration to adopt the PACE Clean Energy Program. This is a program that is through the state that would allow property owners to make energy efficient improvements to their property leveraging the value of that property. So the debt would actually go on the deed. It would ride with the land. It would be paid back over time through the property taxes, and if that property was sold, that liability would remain with the property, so it would be part of the transaction. This is not an ordinance. There's actually just a vote that was needed to be taken by the council to enact this, and that was approved 5-0. I'm still having a hard time getting the report up. Let me go to the other source here. We had a brief discussion about the proposal to have a ordinance to address the black swallowwort problem. We discussed this previously. This was Councilor Baugh. This was your item that you originally proposed, and I had been working with the administration on it. Ultimately, Director Oliveira spoke, and her recommendation was that we table the item. There's a number of questions regarding how exactly it would work. Stuff grows back very quickly. It's very vigorous. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons why it's such a challenge. And how exactly that would work in terms of, you know, would it be a repeat violation? It's just, it got complicated. And the administration's request was that we table it and continue to focus on the efforts that began a year or two ago. And with some success, certainly this plant is not gone from the city by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a very well received, and I think she said it was one of the most, you know, retweeted or liked or reposted social media efforts that they've seen, which is great. The more we get the word out there, the more folks will be aware of it. So given all of the other items that are before the committee, we decided that it was prudent to let that one be for the moment. And if, you know, if we ultimately see that there's a number of properties where problems remain, then we can come back to it. But for now, we decided to leave that one be. We discussed briefly working towards an ordinance to prohibit the use of prison labor. The solicitor's office is working on that, and heard briefly from Councilor Ewan-Campen on his request to create an ordinance regarding the licensing of rental car agencies who tend to park their cars on the street. So we'll have a future discussion on those. That's the extent of what was on the agenda. I still can't get the report to come up for some reason, but with that, I would request that move that the report be accepted as submitted, Mr. President.
Councilor Davis moves to accept the committee report as submitted. Any discussion? Councilor Ballantyne.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the chair, I want to know, so I believe this ordinance discussion started about 4 years ago, and while I sat on the Legislative Matters Committee, I'd asked a number of times for the administration to provide data of this ordinance. How many problem or difficult projects had they worked on that would have helped if this type of ordinance had been in place? And I didn't see it in the few hours before this meeting agenda that data has ever been provided, but maybe I missed something.
On that, is that addressed to Councilor Davis?
Yes, to the chair, please. Or to the administration.
Yeah, Councilor Ballantyne, can you, if it's a question to the chair, can you reframe it, please?
So through the president to the chair is I had requested a number of times while I sat on the committee data from OSPCD on the number of projects in the past that would have benefited, and they said there was a talk about going back about 5 years that would have benefited if there had been a demolition ordinance in place to help them. So basically, I'm trying to understand what's the number here that we're talking about.
Mr. President?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question, Councilor Ballantyne. I am looking through my notes, and such as they are, I was able to pull my files on this matter going back to several years. I think this discussion began, I believe, when I was not when I was not on the committee, but I do have notes from the meetings since I've been on the committee, and I don't see anything in my notes. That certainly doesn't mean that we didn't have that answer in committee. I know that just to summarize the effect of the amendment to the existing demolition review ordinance, which is what this is, would be to reduce the number of properties that would be subject to the ordinance. The current ordinance applies to any property that's 50 years old or older. This amendment increases that to 75 years. So significant reduction in the number of properties. And I do recall seeing some data on those numbers at some point in time. It might have been a slide deck. And short of looking through every slide here live, I don't have that. But I believe that Director Proakis is here. Liaison Weber, is Director Proakis available to answer questions if he's able to?
He is here. Would you like to sponsor him to speak?
So if I may, Mr. President, through you to Liaison Weber, Khushbu, are you aware whether Director Proakis was able to, if he's wanting to address these questions or has any response to these questions? So I guess, Mr. President, if I pose a question to Liaison Weber first.
George says that he can address it.
George says he can. Okay. I didn't see that comment. So then, yes, I'd like to sponsor Director Proakis, please.
All right, Mr. Proakis, you are up.
Unmute, George.
George, you're muted. You're still muted, George. We're going to get this right someday.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can hear
you.
you.
You're very low, but we can hear you.
I'm sorry. The headphones seem to be set in a mute setting that I couldn't get them out of. I'm okay now?
Yep.
All right. So there is quite a few data set information, data sets that we were asked for and we processed. And I was looking back at the data as Councillor Ballantyne was mentioning her particular question. As Councillor Davis mentioned, we did provide information about the flip from 50 to 75 years. We provided information on a number of things. I note there's a January 2019 email from Councillor Ballantyne to Councillor Niedergang that ended up with our staff requesting information about, particularly, it did refer to problem properties that would have benefited from I believe, the longer time frame. Now I want to focus on the idea that there's a lot of reasons we're doing this ordinance. The longer time frame is something that we spent a lot of time talking about and got the council was looking for that 18 months. But a lot of the other reasons we're doing the ordinance is because we wanted to make sure that we were able to get all sorts of benefits out of that made the process work better and more efficiently. So I see that request. I'm looking through my paperwork. I don't see a response to that request. So that's the only information I can really offer sitting here right now at this point with a limited period of time to look at it, to acknowledge that I'm aware from my paperwork in my emails the councillor made the request. I don't have in my records a response to that request. The council can see fit to do what they would like with that. Certainly, we always stand ready to provide information if the council determines that they want that information before making a decision.
Mr. President, may I ask a question of Mr. Proakis?
Go right ahead.
So through you to Mr. Proakis, do you have any sense of what the numbers are?
Your own notes, which I think were based upon Sarah White's own comments that night, was that there are 1 or 2 projects a year that really kind of get stuck in a circumstance where we'd like to spend more time trying to save them, and they just essentially timed out at the 9 months. There are a number of others where the Historic Commission and the staff and the development team or the group that wants to demolish the building are able to come to some conclusion, either to say to demolish or to demolish with certain conditions, a plaque be placed somewhere, or photography of the building be memorialized, or something of that sort. More often than not, that's what occurs. The note suggests that Sarah had indicated that there were, like 2 a year that were challenges where we would have liked to have said, all right, let's dig deeper into that. But I don't have more information right now than what's in that note.
Thank you, Mr. Proakis. That does jog my memory. So the question is, this 14-page ordinance is to address 2 properties on average a year that are historically significant and are demolished more than 50%, or more than 50% of the buildings are demolished. And
Is that a question?
I'm talking out loud to make sure that I'm, hearing everything here, and then trying to understand, with the tightening up of this ordinance and the loopholes that I understood existed and don't exist anymore, is 18 months really necessary to go that far? I really struggle with the 18 months portion. I think that 9 months is really where it should be. So I'm happy to hear what my colleagues have to say. Thank you. But I would like to say is I'm really annoyed at not getting that information, because I asked for it like 4 times, and this has been in for 4 years. And if we want to be a data-driven, thoughtful, intelligent council, that if we ask for data to understand how this fits into the context and the big picture, I think, because it was a sticking point with me, asking 4 times and not getting it is just really annoying. Thank you.
And I think George wants to respond to that, but Councilor Niedergang's been waiting. And then I have a motion from Councilor Scott. Councilor Niedergang?
Thank you, Mr. President, but I'd rather that Mr. Proakis speak first, and I'll speak later.
George, do you have a comment on that? George is all set. Councilor Niedergang, you're...
Well, yeah, I'm
all set, George?
I'm good at this point.
Okay.
Yes,
Councilor
yes.
Niedergang.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the length of the demolition delay, whether it's 9 or 18 months or some other number, is just one piece of the tremendous improvement in the whole process of consideration of historical properties that this ordinance would put into effect. So Mr. Proakis mentioned that, but I want to emphasize that we didn't spend 4 years just debating how many months the demolition delay period would be. So there's many other significant and important things in this, which I'm sure Mr. Proakis could go through in great detail, or I could, if any counselor should want it. But on the point of the length of the demolition delay, it's my opinion, and I've seen this in developments in my ward, that 9 months is just part of the cost of doing business for developers. And only developers do demolition. We're not talking about neighbors here or families. People don't demolish houses and rebuild them. Developers do. The thing about 18 months, it may only be 2 cases a year that staff has identified, but it's all a question of leverage and negotiation. So there may only be 2 cases where it absolutely changes the outcome of what the developer would do. But if there were a longer period, the Historical Preservation Commission, a commission made up of residents of the city, would have a lot more leverage in negotiating with developers. So instead of maybe getting a little plaque that costs a developer $100, they might get a memorialization and a display, such as what we see at Maxwell's Green, that costs the developer $50,000, and that provides a historical record that is of great enduring value to the city. So it's not just those one or two cases. But the real problem with the 9 months not being sufficient is that developers are making so much money in the city with development, they could just wait the 9 months. It's no skin off of their nose, so it'll cost them a little bit more in their carrying costs. Interest rates are very low now anyway, so it's not much. So it's barely a little, you know, thread in the process for the developer. They just sit for 9 months and do other things and then demolish the property. And the whole point of historical preservation is to preserve the historical aspects of our city. And these are mostly, you know, 1 and 2 family homes. These are small homes. There's not going to be affordable housing in these properties. They're just houses that developers are taking. They want to knock them down, build a, you know, a 2 or 3 unit condo for wealthy people, sell it and make the most money they can and move on to the next one. They don't want any delays or disturbances. And if they did, then perhaps they would do something else and leave these historic properties and not demolish them. So it's really not just about the number of properties, it's about leverage and power, frankly. Who has the power to determine what happens with these historic properties? Developers or our Historic Preservation Commission, made up of, I think, 15 residents of the city, most of whom are professionals. This commission has specific designations for architects and other professionals in the field to be on it. This is a very savvy group of people, not some yahoos who just want to preserve old properties for the sake of there being old properties. The properties that would be preserved have been extensively researched by city staff, reviewed by the commission, and they're properties that have value. And the whole point of this, and the point of having 18 months rather than 9, is to preserve more of the city's historical legacy. And I don't see what we lose by doing that. The only cost is that developers now have to pay more money because they have to hold their properties for 18 months instead of 9 months before they demolish them. And, you know, presumably the condos for wealthy people that they're going to pay $1 million for may be $1,050,000 or $1,100,000 instead of $1 million. To me, that's no cost at all to the benefit of the city. But the benefit of having the longer demolition delay period is that we will simply preserve more beautiful historic structures that have value, enduring value to the residents and the life of the city. So that's why I completely support it. I actually wanted 24 months, but was willing to compromise at 18. And that's why I think we should, you know, we've discussed this ordinance for 4 years. There's been plenty of time to look at all these issues. I think we should pass it. I'd like to see it ordained and passed tonight. Thank you.
Okay. I think we've exhausted the conversation on the time frame. So unless anybody wants to make a motion to amend what we have, we still have to have that before us. Councilor Scott, you have a motion.
Thank you for the recognition, Mr. President. I do have a motion to amend. Before making it, I do want to address one thing that was just said, which is that the only people that do demolition in the city is developers. And I could not disagree more. And I'm sorry that my colleague doesn't see that. I mean, I know of 2 families right now who are attempting to undertake extensive renovation of the structures that they live in. These are long-time residents of the city, lived here over a decade, who have to renovate their homes because of massive, significant structural issues. Structural issues, I might add, that become more and more prevalent as we all continue to live in structures that are between 100 and 150 years old due to a variety of factors, but much of it going back to the legacy of zoning being passed in 1920. So It's simply not true that the only cost of this is borne by developers. The total delay period is an incredible cost. As my colleague pointed out, for a developer, 9 months is a drop in the bucket. And in fact, even 18, in the grand scheme of things, if you're smart about how you put your permitting in place, if you're smart about how you schedule your project, it's just another line on a worksheet. But for a homeowner who is looking at the prospect, the extremely costly prospect of a renovation so total because of structural issues that it constitutes the demolition of the building, it is daunting to the point of terror, and in fact encourages them to simply sell the structure to a developer as opposed to doing what they want to do, which is continue to renovate this property and to continue to live on the block with the people that they've grown to know and love over the course of a year, 10 years, 20 years, or many more. These costs land most significantly on these homeowners, and more of us who live in old buildings are going to be faced with those kind of problems. That's why I am really pleased with all of the other work that's gone into the, to crib a phrase from our zoning conversations, the work on the operating system to streamline the process. I think that's excellent work. And in general, I support what's been done with this ordinance. But I cannot countenance extending to, certainly not to 24 months or even to 18 months, this delay process when it lands so heavily on people who are just trying to make their homes work. I might add that becomes even more complicated in for people who are in multifamily homes, which is a vast majority of our residents. In multifamily homes, you know, you might have a longtime tenant in that second unit. You don't want to kick them out forever. You want to make sure that when that renovation happens, everybody comes back. Well, the uncertainty of, can I renew the lease? When do I have to help them find a temporary place to live, just like we will while our home's being renovated? When can I bring them back? All of this is just extraordinary onerous. It's, quite frankly, it's a level of fear and uncertainty and doubt that can tilt the scales toward just simply selling and moving to Tinksboro, right? So I had to address that, and it is the place from which I am making my amendment. I apologize. I had written a much larger memo that discusses some of the impacts of the ordinance. I have confidence that we can come back to make some of these modifications because I think in many ways this is counter to the goals of some revision. I think our exemption areas are nowhere near broad enough given the work that this council put into creating mid-rise districts all over the city with the express purpose of getting larger buildings there and encouraging development of those areas, not just in the transform, but along many of our main corridors. To not exclude them means that we're working at cross purposes to ourselves. But with that said, I would simply move to amend the proposal that's before us this evening to reduce the delay period back to 9 months. The planning department is just happy to have the operating system upgraded. And I encourage us to do that. And if it becomes evident that this upgrade was not sufficient, if the time delay continues to be insufficient and we see just travesties happening, just like the amendments that I plan to propose in 3 to 6 months, we can propose extending this delay once again. But the delay that's being proposed is again, far beyond what neighboring communities have done. And I'm not talking about hypothetical families here. I'm talking about families right now in Somerville, one of which, if I could relay, has been attempting to go through this process already, and their delay hasn't even yet begun, and they are now over 90 days into the process just to renovate the house they live in. So I guess, Mr. President, I defer to you on the timing of when it needs to be, the amendment needs to be made. It's possible we need to accept the committee report and then when the ordinance is before us to propose the amendment. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Eagerly waiting. Before I have a couple comments, but before that, we still got to approve the committee report. So Councilor Davis moves to accept the committee report as submitted. and we're going to sever item number 20478 from the committee report. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, the committee, do we need a roll call for severing, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, Mr. President, we do.
A roll call on severing the item from the committee report.
There's a roll call vote on severing the demolition review ordinance from the Committee on Legislative Matters report of September 17th. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes, please.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of the motion. The report, that item has been severed from the balance of the report.
Okay, now on the committee report that is severed. Please call the roll.
Mr. President, this is on simply the approval of the balance of the Legislative Matters Committee report, apart from the severed item.
Yes.
Very good. On that item, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes, please.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk, could you repeat that? I didn't hear it. I lost connection.
Through the chair, through the president, this is a roll call vote in connection or to approve the report of the Committee on Legislative Matters meeting, the committee report with the exception of the demolition review ordinance, which has been severed from the report.
Thank you. Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the committee report has been approved with the exception of item number 204-278, demolition review ordinance, which is before the council.
Okay, now the item is before us. Councilor Scott, you have an amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would simply move to amend the language in, sorry, I'm having a moment. Looking for the exact line item here. Perhaps the clerk could be of assistance, but I'm pulling it up.
Clerk, do you have that before you?
Not at the moment. I will endeavor to find it. Hang on a sec.
Can we just move to change the date from 18 to 9 months? Do we need to name that line item?
I believe we do, sir. That would be in section 7.1A. This looks like an older version of text. It's possible that Minute Track has not been updated with the most recent version that was sent to council.
Mr. President, Councilor is correct. I have an updated version, and it is 7.1A.
7.1A?
Yeah.
All right. Does that help you, Councilor Scott?
Yes, I would just update it simply to substitute 9 for 18.
All right. Councilor Scott moves to change the months from 18 to 9. On that, Councilor Klingon, we haven't heard from you yet.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, with regards to the length of time, I remember being in Legislative Matters Committee last session when I was on that committee, and we had lengthy discussions about the time. I thought we had all kind of come to the agreement that 12 months would most likely be the appropriate. I believe that it would mirror the other cities and towns around. It could be wrong on that in terms of my memory, but you know, I know there was definitely it was definitely the will of the folks on the committee at that point that 9 months was a little too short, but maybe 18 was a little too hefty. So I'd like to hear the folks on this discussion, but yeah, I'd be poised to support 12 months.
All right, Councilor Davis and then Councilor Niedergang.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of things on the motion, just as to set the frame. The original proposal by Councilor Niedergang was, as he noted, was 24. Well, they weren't original proposal, but his position was 24 months, and we were discussing the time period in that context, and so the vote taken at committee was specifically to and unanimous to change that, which was a blank essentially in the prior version or the most recent version before this final one, to make that an 18-month period. We do have back in 2017, I think. Well, it's hard to tell when we received this. We did receive information on other municipalities. At least at that time, there was about at least 10 or so other municipalities that use an 18-month period, including Newton and Brookline among them. So that's certainly not out of the ordinary. And just to clarify, I guess, or respond to some of the points that were made in the making of the motion. You know, first off, this is not a new 14-page ordinance. This is an amendment to an existing ordinance. It is a rewriting of the ordinance. It has been stated. It makes it much more clear, much better. It's gone through a number of iterations following public hearings and countless committee meetings. It does not prohibit renovation per se. It only applies to demolition. Demolition is defined very specifically in the ordinance, and that also was the topic of significant changes from earlier versions. And it would require the demolition of 50% or more of the exterior surface area. If you're just working on the inside, this just doesn't apply. Routine maintenance, etc. So there's a list of 6 specific exclusions from what would apply. So while a demolition of a historic property would apply to this, certainly, it's not quite as all-encompassing as I feel like it was characterized. It's also important to remember, and this got lost a number of times during the discussion. It's easy to do, and I understand it, but it's important to remember that this is not prescribing an 18-month period for no matter what. The entire point is that the owner of the property work with the Historic Commission to come up with an appropriate form of preservation. There were examples given in deliberation where after working with the Historic Commission, the property owner actually realized they could do a better project by preserving the structure, moving it, building around it. That was one, that's one option. That's one example. Something that might come out of that conversation. The reason for the delay is to force that conversation to happen. As soon as that conversation happens, if both sides agree, then the delay period's over and you move forward. So this is not requiring everybody to put a project on hold for 18 months by any interpretation. And as Councilor Neithergang noted, there's great examples of where that negotiation resulted in something other than preserving the structure. The existing structure could be completely demolished and gone, but there's other types of preservation that can happen. And the idea of this time period is to create more leverage. And the Historic Commission was very clear when introducing this, and long prior to introducing this several years ago, that they felt that they didn't have any meaningful leverage with a 9-month waiting period. And so that was from their perspective, that was a primary purpose of undertaking a revision of this existing ordinance. So I was compelled initially in this process that a 24-month period was appropriate. I was also compelled to back off of that position in order to get this passed, and agreed to the compromise of 18 months. And I still feel that that is an entirely appropriate period. It's consistent with a number of communities in the Commonwealth, including some not too far from Somerville. And I believe it will at least significantly improve the Historic Commission's ability to work with developers or property owners to come up with some sort of appropriate preservation. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Neithergang.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councilor Davis, for those comments. I have two things to say. The first is that the push for the longer delay period did not come from staff. It came from members of the commission who are residents of the city, unlike the staff who have worked on this. So it's the people who live here and who serve on the commission who wanted the longer delay period. The second point I want to make is that Section 6.1 has in it what I understand to be an exemption if there are structural integrity issues. It says, in the event that the applicant and/or owners seek to take a position that the building is of deficient structural integrity, the applicant shall submit an independent licensed structural engineer's report from a qualified and experienced structural engineer with proven expertise in historic building techniques. So, Councilor Scott, I would advise you to tell your constituents that they should do this and seek an exemption if their house needs to be demolished because of structural issues. So there is an exemption for that kind of situation in the ordinance, and I will vote against this amendment. But should it pass, I will still vote for the ordinance because there's so many valuable things in this ordinance besides the length of the demolition delay period. Thank you.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief and then amend my motion. I would simply say that it is asinine to say that this doesn't apply to renovation, because it is. It is currently being applied to renovations, people who are applying to renovate their homes. I understand the intention may not be there, but that is how the current ordinance is being applied, and that piece of language doesn't change. The idea, again, to get an exemption to the structural, getting a structural engineer to claim that the structure is unstable is a tool that we have seen developers use recently to bypass the demo ordinance, most particularly on, I believe it was Somerville Avenue. But to do that puts a homeowner, potentially several homeowners here, in the situation of functionally condemning their building in the hopes that they could bypass a demo delay, which may or may not be granted. But at that point, the cat's already out of the bag. It's really a terrible set of choices. So I don't believe it's sufficient. I don't believe it's a sufficient relief valve. I appreciate the counselor from Ward 4 refreshing my memory about this discussion. I'd be happy to amend my motion to be substituting 12 months instead of 18. Again, this is as much as the initial concern and request is coming from members of the community who serve on the Historical Preservation Commission. My concern is coming from the office hours that I hold every week. when I have people from the city come in and ask questions about how to navigate the, quite frankly, bewildering and intimidating set of systems we have in the city to get things done. This is a real life problem that is happening to families right now, and I don't want to make that problem worse. So Mr. President, with that said, I would amend my motion to be replacing 18 with 12, and I'd ask, not needing to belabor the point any further, I'd ask simply that we vote on it. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Scott moves to amend his age from 9 months to 12 months. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll just weigh in really quick. I support Councilor Scott's amendment because the planning department said in committee that 9 months is the average time it takes. I supported 18 months because I think we just have to pick a date and vote on this because it's been 4 years. So if this passes or fails, this amendment, I'm still supporting it because I think the planning department supports it. I've never known them to be people who are trying to stop development. So I think that this is generally just a good idea and worth ending conversation. But now I see numerous people want to ask questions. Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. So just to elaborate, on this motion, even if we vote yes or no, we're still, is it, okay, if we vote, so we're motion, catching up on.
Right now, the ordinance says that 18 months is the limit of delay. Councilor Scott is making it 12. So if you want it to be 12, you vote yes. If you want it to remain 18, you vote no.
And then once it is amended, then what?
Then we'll do a vote on the ordinance itself.
Tonight. Okay, got it. Thank you.
There's no other amendments.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Councilor Davis, Baugh, and Rossetti. And everyone, please, it's like this is the conversation we've had for 4 years. I think we just need to vote on it. Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, because the amendment was revised since I spoke, while I appreciate the intent, I still believe that 24 months is the appropriate period based on the input from the Historic Commission, and I still will stick with the compromise at 18 months. Thank you.
Councilor Baugh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I guess one question I have is, I've been, first of all, been listening to this, participating since I've been on the council. So I really, I'm also ready to vote on this tonight. But I guess, and I respect the members of the legislative committee that have been working on this ever since, and appreciate their hard work. And I will be inclined to, support the 18 months. But I want a clarification about when Councilor Scott said this demolition review ordinance apply to renovation. Can somebody from the administration speak to that? Because I never heard that, like it applied to renovation, but I thought these are two different stuff, that demolition itself. So like when you say that it applies to renovation, like is there some case that you can cite to, and just so that I can be more clear about the nuance? Can you speak to it, Councilor Scott, or is there a member from the administration? But
George, still in the audience?
Like I said, I respect people on the legislative body that have been working on this that predates, like my tenure.
Yep, George is here to answer your question.
All right, can you hear me?
George, take it away.
Thank you. Just want to make sure you can hear me. My headphones were causing me some difficulties before. So for the old ordinance, demolition was not very well defined, so it wasn't clear. For this ordinance, we defined it if you're removing more than 50% of the exterior surface area of the building. So the first rule is you have to be removing at least 50% of the building in your renovation for a renovation to be defined as a demolition for this ordinance. It also specifically exempts on single, 2, and 3 family projects something called a minor project, which means if you're adding a dormer, dormer window, entry canopy, bay, gable, a side addition, a rear addition, altering a portico, porch, or deck, or changing the shape or style of the roof, or any combination of all of those things, and you go beyond the 50% because the dormer plus the addition plus the roof gets you to the point where you're beyond 50%, that would not trigger the ordinance. So there are certain types of renovation pieces you can put together and not trigger the ordinance. There is a form of renovation. If you rip 2 sides of the house off and start replacing them with something else, you are going to trigger the ordinance. If you have a larger building and you tear half of it down or just try to keep a piece of facade, you might call that renovation, but the ordinance calls it demolition. So there's a very specific set of circumstances where it does trigger the ordinance if you take enough of the building away, with some exemptions for small houses. I hope that answers the question. And that is different than the way it's currently defined in the current ordinance. This is new and clearer than the current rules.
George, that's through you, Mr. President. That's a lot of mumbo jumbo there. But George, I get what I'm asking. So this revised ordinance, does it apply to renovation?
I guess that really depends upon how much of a house you're doing. I mean, if you're renovating the inside of a house, absolutely not. You can tear out everything inside of a house and not trigger it. If you're renovating the inside of a house and just adding a dormer or just adding a porch, no, absolutely would not do so. You have to take half of the building down for it to count.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Rossetti's been waiting. You have a comment?
Briefly, Mr. President, I chaired legislative matters 3 chairmans ago, and when I was chair way back then, I sat with the citizens who took thousands of hours to present their recommendation, and honestly, they were begging me to really to try to get me to understand. And I read the document. We got together multiple times. I had questions, answers, definitions. Then we had meetings, and at that time it was Sarah White, who was on the team, who met with us, and she too had some reservations about the length of time. But over time, and I appreciate Chairman Niedergang and now Chairman Davis and the work they've put into it, I'm ready to support the motion on the main motion on the floor by the committee.
Okay, you're talking about the amendment?
I will not be supporting the amendment. I will be supporting, if the amendment fails, I will be supporting the main motion of the report.
Any further discussion on the amendment before us? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President, this is a roll call vote on amending the demolition review ordinance by replacing in section 7.1A the phrase 18 months with the phrase 12 months. On that change, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Rimbaugh.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne. Councilor Ballantyne.
I apologize. I guess I'm tired. So we're voting on changing it to 12 months, correct?
Changing it from 18 months to 12 months.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Councilor Strezzo.
No.
Councilor Niedergang.
No.
Councilor Davis.
No.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Recused.
He's recused. Oh, there you go.
Councilor Rossetti.
No.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, 6 councilors have voted in favor of the amendment. 4 councilors are opposed. 1 is recused. The amendment has been approved.
All right. Do we have any?
Mr. President,
Yes.
Mr. President, move to approve and enroll and ordain the revised revision to the ordinance before us.
Thank you. Councilor Davis moves to enroll and ordain. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll on enrollment.
First, Mr. President, we have to vote to approve the ordinance as amended. The amendment has been passed. Now we have to vote on the ordinance as amended.
I'm just so eager to get this done. Please call.
On approval of the ordinance as amended, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen. Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, 10 councilors have voted in favor of that item. 1 is recused. The ordinance as amended has been approved.
On enrollment.
On enrollment of the ordinance, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen. Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, 10 councilors have voted in favor of enrollment. 1 is recused. That ordinance has now been enrolled.
On ordainment.
On ordainment, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White. Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen. Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, 10 councilors have voted in favor of ordainment. 1 councilor is recused. That ordinance has been ordained.
Congratulations, everyone. We passed a law. Next item.
That brings us, Mr. President, to item number 33, which is a report of the Committee on Licenses and Permits, which met on September 23rd.
Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met with myself chairing and members Mba and Scott also in attendance. There were basically 2 main items that we addressed. The first was item 210484, that the administration work with this council for smooth transition of outdoor seating permits when they reach the council for renewal beyond November 1st. I had submitted that item, and, you know, there was a concern raised by a number of folks in the community about the current operation and the need that it should be continued with the licensing commission to, you know, create certainty and transparency and predictability as folks moved forward. So I worked with the city clerk, economic development, and the city solicitor's office to basically come up with this order, which is, be it hereby ordered by the city council in session assembled, that through December 31st, 2021, any business with a license from the City of Somerville Licensing Commission for outdoor food and/or beverage service or outdoor seating shall not require further authorization from the City Council pursuant to Section 12-14 of the Somerville Code of Ordinances. This was unanimously approved by all members. Then the next items that we dealt with were the renewals of the lodging houses submitted by Tufts, and I think there's 38 of them, so I won't read each one individually. But this was a follow-up to the discussion at the prior committee meeting, where there were a couple of concerns that were issued. One of them was Councilor Mba, the concern to make sure that all of the conditions and all of the licenses had in fact been complied with, that Inspectional Services had issued, and it was also fire inspection, and it was confirmed that yes, all of the conditions were met. And then Councilor Scott had some policing issues, and those were addressed in the public health meeting that we had last week. So at that last meeting, I had asked the city solicitor to work with Doug Kress from Human Services to come up with a condition that we would impose on any one of these, on all of these licenses that were renewed. And basically, the language is this: the lodging house shall operate in a manner designed to provide for the safety of the students and the public in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, as determined by the Somerville Board of Health or its authorized agent. This includes, but is not limited to, strict adherence to Tufts University's own testing protocols dated September 4th, 2020. So what this language does, it basically provides the city with, in effect, the ability to intervene if, in fact, Tufts University is not following their their procedure, or if in fact, let's say that testing protocol was determined to be insufficient and that there was now a problem found by the Somerville Board of Health. So based on the discussions that had been raised and concerns of folks in the community, and within the limits of our ability to condition these, the committee unanimously approved this as well. So I would ask that the committee report be approved as submitted.
All right, Councilor White moves to approve the committee report as submitted. On that, Councilor Davis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, I just want to thank you, Councilor White, for the first piece. I fully support the idea of giving these folks the opportunity to stay open longer. Frankly, as far as I'm concerned, if it's a warm day in January and they want to pull a few tables out, I'd be okay with that, but I know there's a lot more to it. So thank you for that. Fully support it and appreciate the work.
Thank you.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say thank you to the chair for shepherding this entire conversation, several conversations actually that have been very difficult, and also want to point out what incredible trust that this council has placed in the licensing commission during this difficult time, and quite frankly, how well-deserved and earned that trust has been, and how well it's been held by the License Commission under the leadership of Chairman Lynch. I just think it's an excellent example of city government really working hard and working well for the benefit of its residents and its businesses in a very difficult time. So I have full confidence in extending this trust that we've placed in the Licensing Commission during this difficult time, and I thank them, all three of them, for their service.
Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to join in with Councilor Scott's comments with regard to our licensing commission and the chair, especially because they have done yeoman's work. They've had numerous meetings, many of them on relatively short notice, to try to accommodate the interests of our, restaurant owners, and I believe that they've contributed to the ability of some of these folks to hang on during these tough times.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, the committee report, it will be laid on the table and accepted as submitted. Next item.
Mr. President, item number 34 is a report of the Committee on Public Health and Public Safety, which met on September 14th as a committee of the whole.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, a quick correction on my last report on legislative matters. That meeting, all the members were there. This was the meeting where it was a committee of the whole, and Councilor Rossetti had another commitment. So apologies for that. Everyone else was available, and I know Councilor Rossetti reviewed the meeting afterwards. The minutes that are here are very exhaustive and very detailed, so I will let them speak for themselves if folks want to take a look, and I request that they be accepted as submitted.
That's how you do a committee report. Councilor Davis moves to accept the committee report as submitted. Any discussion? Seeing none, the committee report is laid on the table for approval. Next item.
Number 35 is report of Special Committee on Rodent Issues, which met on September 23rd.
Councilor Euenkamp.
Thank you, Mr. President. The meeting minutes and video are available. I just want to mention two items briefly. At yesterday's meeting, we received a presentation on the city's new integrated pest management plan that will involve weekly meetings between Ms. Georgiana Silvera, the rat czar, and health inspectors, as well as monthly interdepartmental meetings. It's a very interesting document. It was emailed to the council and is attached to the agenda as a PDF, and I recommend looking at that. I also wanted to mention one of the items that we spoke about at length was ensuring that renters know that if they are having rodent issues, that they will not, that their identity will be protected if they make a complaint that winds up, with their landlord receiving a visit from an inspector. We were told repeatedly that when, for example, folks from the baiting program or health inspectors go to a property, they don't show up and say, "Hi, your tenant complained." They show up and say, "We are seeking to do baiting in this area based on increased complaints, rodent observations," and folks are trained to do that for a reason. So for anyone who's following this, the reason I bring this up is I've gotten a number of concerned renters reaching out who are kind of scared to put in complaints. So I just want everyone to make sure that this is something the city takes seriously, and you should feel comfortable making those complaints and observations of rodents. And with that, I ask that the committee report be accepted as submitted.
All right, Councilor Euenkamp moves to accept the committee report as submitted. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's approve that and take the other items that have been laid on the table for approval.
Very good, Mr. President. This would be then a motion to approve agenda items 17 through 26, 29 through 31, and 33 through 35, and place item 27 on file. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Euenkamp.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of that motion. It has been approved.
All right, Councilor White.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to reconsider the order and the license and permits committee report extending the seating permits to the licensing commission in the hopes that reconsideration fails.
All right, Councilor White moves for reconsideration. So we do a roll call vote on reconsideration, and I need a reminder on this. We're going to do two votes. One is to reconsider, and then the other is to change your vote, right, Mr. Clerk?
Very good, Mr. President.
Yes.
So this is a roll call vote to reconsider the Licenses and Permits Committee report so that it comes before this council again. On that item, Councilor Klingon.
No.
Councilor Mba.
Before we go further, I guess the yes vote would be to reconsider, and then we can vote no to not change your vote if your intention is to not change the vote.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought we did want a reconsideration to fail. So, all right, yes?
Councilor Mba.
Wow, I've said yes tonight. This is the 10th time I'm saying yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
We need a flow chart for this for next time. Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the City Council has one opportunity to move to reconsider an item. They have until noontime Monday to do that. Councilor White has moved to do that reconsideration now, and reconsideration has been approved. So the Licenses and Permits Committee report is now again before this City Council.
This was a lot easier when we didn't have to do roll call votes. So now this vote, if you don't want to change your vote, vote no. If you want to change your vote, vote yes.
So this is a roll call vote. Is anyone wishing to change their vote on the approval of the Licenses and Permits Committee report? Councilor Klingon.
No.
Councilor Mba.
I'm thinking. No.
Councilor White.
No.
Councilor Ballantyne.
No.
Councilor Strezzo.
No.
Councilor Niedergang.
No.
Councilor Davis.
No.
Councilor Scott.
No.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
No.
Councilor Rossetti.
No.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
No.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted no on changing the vote, and so the Licenses and Permits Committee report reconsideration has been moved and failed.
All right. We've got a number of financial items before us. Councilor Scott or anyone on the council, does anyone want to vote to approve any of these? Otherwise, we'll refer them to committee.
Mr. President, I'd move to waive the readings and refer all the financial items to finance.
Thank you very much. Councilor Scott moves to waive the readings of item number 36. Let's see, all the way down to 50, well, we'll say 51, and refer them to the Finance Committee. Hearing no discussion, the items are all referred to the Finance Committee.
Item number 52 is a communication from the city solicitor seeking approval of the settlement of a pending claim of $249,000 and change for damages to the City Hall Annex in 2018.
On the item.
Mr. President, this is a request for Solicitor Wright to appear before the council to discuss it. So I would recommend referring this also to finance.
Yes, seeing no discussion, this item will be referred to Finance.
Item 53 is a communication from the Urban Forestry Committee, which conveys a statement on the planned remediation of Conway Park.
Any discussion?
Mr. President.
Yep.
Thank you, if I may. I just want to highlight this. This is exactly, I think, what the City Council created the Urban Forestry Commission for. And one of the items that was waived the reading of was a appropriation request for a $6 million bond for remediation and renovation of Conway Park. That is going to be a very intense discussion, and given that previously, when the Finance Committee considered it as a committee, there was a severing of the item and the action of the committee was overturned. It is my inclination to make the discussion of this bonding request a committee of the whole. I just want to highlight on this particular item that this is the input of the Urban Forestry Committee by a vote taken of that committee, which also includes city staff members. And I encourage all members of this council to read it in advance of our discussion. There are a great many references and points in there, but ultimately it's a resolution in the same form that the city council takes when making its resolutions, urging a different course of action than the one the administration is presenting to us. I am sure that will become very relevant in the course of conversation. So I would ask that this communication be placed on file with a copy to Finance Committee so that I can include it on the agenda when we take up the Conway Park item as a committee of the whole. Thank you.
Very good. Seeing no discussion, this item is laid on the table, placed on file, and referred to the Finance Committee. Next.
Mr. President, I move to waive the reading of items 54 through item 60 approve them all except for item 57, which has to go to my committee for a public hearing.
All right, Councilor White moves to approve items 54 through 60, except for 57. Any discussion? Let's do a roll call vote on these items.
Mr. President, this is a roll call vote on the approval of items 54, 55, 56, 58, 59, and 60, and placing item 53 on file. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes, please.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of that motion. Those items have been approved or, in one case, placed on file.
All right, next item.
Item number 61 is a communication from the Tufts University's president responding to a board item with regard to Tufts COVID-19 testing program.
Any discussion? Hearing none, this item is laid on the table and placed on file.
Item number 62 is a communication submitted by Councilor Rossetti reporting on the high school building committee meeting of September 14th.
Councilor Rossetti.
Mr. President, thank you. We held our monthly meeting as usual. Some of the updates is that I did share with you, my colleagues, there is now a 44-minute video available on YouTube that's very informative, where all members of the public can see the inside of the building and understand what has taken place, what will be taking place. It's a very good video document done by our project manager, so I encourage everybody to check that out. Suffolk did update us the month of August. There were an average of 305 tradespersons daily on the project. There has been no COVID reported for the past month. The update of what dates will what be happening. Phase 1, October 15th, which is the new wing that is on target. The gym will be complete by October 30th. Phase 2 for substantial completion will be by November 16. Phase 2A, which is the auditorium, is anticipated for substantial completion by January 29. And the last portion of the project, which is the outdoor field, is for September 3rd, 2021. What it means educationally wise, by November, the mid-November, the building will be available. The superintendent, as I reported at our last council meeting, has asked that the committee understand the importance of her needing more time to work with the staff on making sure everything is proper since we now have COVID. So it's the hope that by January, the staff and students will be in the building, dependent on the decision of the council and school committee, of the superintendent and school committee for January. That will be the report, of course, is up online. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 19 at 4:30. Thank you, Mr.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, this committee report is laid on the table and placed on file.
Item number 63 is a communication submitted by Councilor McLaughlin reporting on the September 21, 2020 school department town hall meeting.
If I could say this in just a few words, come talk to us in December. That's the message. The decision for reopening will be made in December. Any discussion? Hearing none, this item will be laid on the table and placed on file.
Item number 64 is an order submitted by Councilor Ewan Campen that the Director of SBCD update this council on the citywide parking study that began last year.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask that this please be sent to Traffic and Parking.
All right, Councilor Ewan Campen moves to approve lay the item on the table for approval and send it to Traffic and Parking.
Item 65 is a resolution submitted by Councilor Ewan Campen that the administration update this council on the recommendations of the Internet Access Task Force that was convened in 2018 and report what the city is doing to ensure that everyone has reliable access to the internet.
Councilor Klingon would like to sign on. Councilor Ewan Campen and Councilor Davis would like to sign on.
Thank
President.
you.
Councilor Rossetti?
Actually, this time it's Councilor Kristen Strezzo. I think sign on too. It was faster but to just say it. May I please sign on? Thank you.
Everybody wants to sign on to this excellent order. Councilor Ewan Campen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, it's really my honor to submit an order that is just so good that, you know, it's basically unanimous. Excuse me. So this is an issue that's come up repeatedly during the pandemic. We've spoken about it tonight. You know, the digital divide that we've all known about for many years has now basically become a matter of life and death. Many benefits, resources, school, they're only really accessible, easily accessible via the internet. And of course, our school department, the administration, all of us have been, you know, passionately caring about this issue for a long time, and yet I'm actually unaware of where the report from our Internet Access Task Force wound up. This was a task force that was announced in 2018. I know that they've issued a report, and I know that we all have a lot on our plates, but I'm hoping that we can have a kind of formal discussion on what these recommendations are, because you know, I get requests frequently from members of the public. You know, why aren't we doing broadband? Why aren't we doing citywide fiber? And I think that these issues have been discussed at great length by this task force, and they've come up with some recommendations, and I'd like to dig into them. So I'd ask that this go to committee. Possibly Housing and Community Development might make sense, unless you have another suggestion.
That sounds fine to me. Any discussion? Councilor Strezzo.
Yay, yes. Thank you, Councilor Campen, about this. This is important. And I am happy to take it in my committee. This is so vitally important. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, this item is laid on the table for approval and referred to the Housing Community Development Committee. Next item.
Item 66 is a request of the mayor requesting acceptance of an $8,529 grant with no new match required from the Secretary of State's CARES Act funds to the Elections Department for the purchase of the 10 ballot boxes for mail-in voting that you see.
Councilor Scott.
Mr. President, I would move approval of this item tonight, given its crucial nature and no match required. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Scott moves to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's call a roll on this, and all items still laid on the table.
Mr. President, very good. This is a roll call vote on the approval of items 64 through 66 and the placing of 61 through 63 on file. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes, please.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of that motion. It has been approved.
All right, do we have any late items?
Mr. President, there are two late items that have come before this body. The first is an order submitted by Councilor Scott that the city clerk, in consultation with other departments, discuss with this council the discrepancies in notification standards seen in applications for various utilities grant location applications and propose mechanisms by which any discrepancies can be resolved to ensure that proper notification is made to parties of interest.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. This is just coming from the grant allocations we had this evening. I would happy to have this referred to Public Utilities and Public Works and to work with the clerk and the law department to get the answer, hopefully before taking anybody's time on it. Thanks.
All right, Councilor Scott moves for approval and to submit to Public Utilities. Any discussion? Seeing none, this item is laid on the table and referred to Public Utilities, Public Work for approval. Laid on the table for approval. You got it.
And Mr. President, the final item that I'm aware of is a communication from the public. It's from Mr. Barak Gokman, submitting comments with respect to item number 210364, which is the rezoning of 6 parcels in Gilman Square.
All right, this item is laid on the table and placed on file.
With a copy to the Committee on Land Use.
If we have to. Yes, please. Copy to the committee.
Very good.
The planning board.
Very good then.
All right.
There are no further items I'm aware of.
Roll call vote on the 2 items first.
There's a roll call vote on the approval of the late item from Councilor Scott and placing the public communication on file. On that motion, Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, that motion has been approved.
All right, seeing no business before us.
Mr. President?
Somebody, Scott.
Was there a public event permit that was coming in as a late item?
No, that public event permit was withdrawn by the applicant. Talk to Ms. Weber about it. The mural is still moving forward, but it's not on the agenda right now, so we can't discuss it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Weber, I'll give you a call after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Scott, for bringing this up.
All right, Councilor Klingon moves to adjourn. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote on the motion to adjourn. Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Mba.
Yes, please.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Ballantyne.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Niedergang.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Rossetti.
Yes.
And Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Mr. President, all 11 councilors have voted in favor of that motion.
All right, we are adjourned in record time at that. Good night, everybody.